At 1:30, and welcome to the second part of our workshop of May 21st, 2024. We will continue on with the overview of county construction processes, and you may start, Scalazzo. Good afternoon. Go right ahead.
Okay. So once again, for the record, Isami Ayala, Assistant County Administrator and Director of Facilities Development and Operations. Before I commence or recommence, Mayor and Commissioners, we left on slide 27 and we received direction by this board just before taking a recess. So if you will indulge me, I will appreciate to take a couple minutes to recap where we were and then receive direction as to how to proceed forward. Just for general context, this presentation was structured so that we get an opportunity to show you the delivery methods we currently use, the delivery methods we have tried in the past and we have discontinued for several reasons, and then additional delivery methods that are left in the universe, so to speak, out of everything that is available in the market, so to speak. What we do, what we have tried and decided no longer to use, and then what remains. In doing that assessment, we took the time to reach out to our consultants because they do coordinate and have clients in the private and public sectors, and we did ask them the question, is there something that you're seeing that we are not? Is there another delivery method that we have not considered? So with that overall framework in mind, I will appreciate the opportunity, if so this board wishes, to pick up where we left and provide you an overview of the additional delivery methods we use, highlighting the fact that the base delivery method across the board is design build, right? Design bid, sorry. You design something and then you go ahead and bid it out. Every other delivery method that we already use, I will argue, are already alternative methods. The pre-qualifications, the CMRs, are other delivery methods that we have implemented in an effort to advance our processes and projects in a more efficient way. So with that in mind, I am going back to slide 27, and we were talking about projects that we have completed using the CMR delivery method. For FDO, good examples are Palm Trans South, the Supervisor of Elections New Production Facility, PBSO Headquarters renovation, and the 2300 Vista Center expansion. Laura?
As I mentioned previously, examples include the Concourse B expansion project, the switchgear replacement project, the upcoming construction of the aircraft firefighting building, campus-wide terminal facility improvements, which will include the skylight replacement in the main terminal.
Out of the 5 construction departments, there's only one that uses the next delivery method we will discuss, and that department is water utilities. So no one better than Ali to take over this part of the presentation.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Design build is one of the most popular alternative delivery method that is actually getting a lot more even popularity these days. Probably 50% of all the projects in the nation, they get done through that. The main difference between the design bid build versus design build is the parties involved. In a design bid build, we as an owner, we work with the design engineer in our case, and then the separate contract with the contractor. With the design build, there's only one contract for both entities. And a lot of times that saves us time and lower the risk and also help us with knowing the unknowns that not necessarily we're gonna know it with a different method. But the primary way of doing the project for us still is remaining design, bid, build for underground pipeline projects. But for the vertical plants, we do use the design build. So next slide, please. In terms of the contractual, I think the questions are, how do we manage the time and how do we manage the cost of the projects? When you have both parties upfront involved in the project, I mean the designer and also the contractor, we have the benefit of using the experience of both parties. And that helps a lot to see the constructability of the project, with the designer at the same time. And then that translate down the road to less of a change orders, less of a, additional costs and things like this. Next slide, please. Slide 30. What are the contractually allowable reasons for an increase to the contract time? The list here is very general. Owner-initiated additions, owner ordered the stop of the work, force majeures, weather-related, manufacturing and supply chain. I want to emphasize on this one, in the past 5 years, this has been probably one of the biggest problems that we have. I guess you got to use the switch gears, for example. It takes 2 years to order the switch gear to get it. No matter how well connected you are and who you're using, just the supply is not there. Next slide, please. So in addition to design build, we also do progressive design build. I think the main difference between these two, there's a lot of similarities between both methods, but under the progressive design build, we have the off-ramp option, and that means that we start working with both parties through the design, we put the drawings together, we get close to 90%, 100%. We do the bidding on the project. If we don't like it to continue with the same contractor, we have the option to go out and bid the project publicly. So we've been using this method for the Green Cave Phase 2, and so far has been great. It's an open book process. Everything gets bid. We have access to all information, but at the same time, there's only one party that we need to talk to. And that one party is responsible for the change orders, managing everything, including the schedules and everything else. Next slide, please. I think both slides here and the one that's gonna come after is the same like a design build. What caused, one of the things I don't wanna miss is the concept of the GMP. When the GMP gets established prior to go to the construction, we know this is the limit that we're not gonna exceed. So there is, let's say, $100 million GMP, we both agreed on it, is established. It really has to be something that we did not see at all, or something came from outside, or something initiated by someone outside of the project scope that we have to make the changes. Typically, that GMP gives us the protection that we need. The list of the contingencies, we also have the contingencies, and these are the list of the different things that we use a contingency for. Overtime or cancellation ordered by the owner, being county. Escalation of the materials that we have seen it a lot in the past 4 or 5 years again. Some of the subcontractor defaults. Now we go over those stuff with the contractor as well. And again, there's a general list what we do with the contingencies or not. Next slide. And I think that's the last slide on the progressive design build. Yeah, one more. What's allowable as a contingency fund? Up to the owner contingency amount, we typically carry 2 contingencies, one for the owner, one for the project. Owner-initiated additions, reasonable scope of gaps as adjusted reasonable by the owner, again, initiated by us. The last bullet on this one is what are the contractually allowable reasons for an increase? Example being owner-initiated, again, addition after the owner contingency fund is exhausted. And if those contingencies that we have in the project does not get used, it stays with the county. Existing project delivery methods, again, continue with the progressive design build. What are the contractually allowable reasons for an increase to the contract time? Owner-initiated additions, owner-ordered a stop of work, force majeures, weather-related, manufacturing, supply chain, as we discussed. And probably this is the most common reasons for any issues with the progressive design build. Examples. In terms of the design build, we use that contract for a smaller project above ground with the defined scope. And usually the cap for those projects is about $4 million. So we've signed off on the contract for $4 million. It has to stay under $4 million unless there's a good justified reason for it. With respect to the progressive design build, the Green Cave Phase 2, it is progressive design build. As I said before, it's been moving ahead very nicely. And we also have another one, the Western Region Wastewater Treatment Facility Operation Building. That's the City of the Belgrade Wastewater Treatment Plant Operation Building. We did receive about $8 million grant from the state for that project, and probably our portion gonna be about $4 to $5 million. We're developing the GMP for that project as we're speaking these days. If there is any questions on alternative delivery methods, I will pass it to Mr. David.
Ms. Colasso, we do have a question for Mr. Bayat. Should we do it at this time, or is that a fine? Okay, very good. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Hallie, how are you?
Good afternoon.
So I wanted to ask a quick question. So the guaranteed maximum price, it says it's set somewhere, it looks like on this time, is this somewhat of a timeline? That we're looking at the purple that was up there?
We typically set up the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, somewhere up between 60% to 90% of the design.
I guess what I'm asking is what are the approximate timeframes? From the CCNA, it looks like it starts, and then if you go towards the middle, guaranteed maximum price is set. What is what prompts that to be set?
Sure. For us, it's about 6 months to do the CCNA portion. It's a qualified selection. We do the advertisement, RFP, and all that stuff. When that's done, and we have a team under the contract, probably we get to 90%, 60% within a year. So 18 months from the concept to have a GMP for the project. And then after that one, about a year to 2 for construction.
Why does it take so long?
For the selection process,
Yeah, for a contract to be awarded.
well, typically we have advertised for 60 days.
Okay.
And after all the process, the planning is done, we advertise for 60 days. That's 60 days within itself. And then it takes 2-3 months for us to go through the 2 steps process. The first step is to do the shortlisting. Depending on the project, if we get, let's say, 5 different companies, we shortlist first, we bring the 5 to 3. And then after that one, if we only selecting one, we take it to the next level. That's the selection step. We take from 3, and they all come and give a presentation, and we select one. So that takes another 2 months.
Forgive me, Ally, could you
Sure, I'm
please
sorry.
say that again?
Sure.
Wait, you know what, speak right to the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Now we hear you. Good.
I understand, and I have the habit of going too fast. I'm sorry.
Probably an engineer.
Apologize. So going back to the beginning, for the RFP, it takes 60 days. Anybody that has interest, it gets 60 days of advertisement. When we're done with that part, depending on how many proposals we receive. Let's say we receive 5 proposals. The first step is to shortlist it. That takes about a month or 2 to do the shortlist. We put a team together to say, out of these 5, we're only selecting that 3. And then after that one, the next step is the selection, the actual selection for final contractor who's going to be. That's another month or 2. And then the 3 companies, they all get their chance to come. And a lot of times, those times we adjust it based on the request from the parties that they go in after these projects. They want to have all the bosses to come here to say, we got the support or things like that. So we give them a little bit of flexibility that everybody get the same time to be able to bring the best team to the Palm Beach County. So when they come here, and then at that point, we have a selection done, and then we notify the board about the results. And then about 2 months process is our process to push out the final results. So 6 months, less or more, to hire someone.
Would you mind if I kind of,
Please.
how I followed this?
Sure.
So you're saying we have an RFP out for 2 months?
Correct.
60 days. Let's do that. Okay, then it takes 1 to 2 months to get a short list. So if we start with 5, we'll get to 3 or so.
Yes, ma'am.
And then once we have those 3, it takes another couple months to
1
bring
or
it to the
2.
board?
1 month typically, not more than that. It's shorter than the first step. But at the minimum, we would like to give them 30 days to 60 days that they can prep for the presentation,
For a final presentation?
final presentation.
Okay, so, and say it takes 6 months to get to the final, 4 to 6 months, let's say, to get to this final presentation.
Correct.
Then how soon is it awarded after the final presentation?
Then we gotta start to negotiate in the scope with them. At this point, we don't even have the contract yet. So that process depends on the job size, depends on how ready the scope is or not. It could be a month to 3 months. For us, typically, again, I can't speak for all the projects, but usually we try to do it within that time frame, if time allows, and then we bring it to the board.
After 1 to 3 months. I just feel like and again, this just questions, so forgive me. There must be a way, and to the mayor's point earlier, of helping streamline some of this. I mean, we're talking about going in front of boards. I understand giving them time for a presentation, but that's
So-
decent amount
Collazo,
of
do you have
time.
any
If I may,
recommendations?
if Ali doesn't mind. The process we all follow is established by PPM, and the PPM basically tracks back to county ordinances and requirements, right? The purchasing code, the OABO ordinance. The number of days that we need to advertise is set by ordinance and PPM. Our typical selection process entails 2 steps, right? Depending on the number of responses you get. And as Ali shared, we advertise for 45 calendar days, which typically translates into 45 business days, which typically translates into 60 days,
And
2
that's
months.
what process? That's the RFP process?
And that's the RFP process under OEBO ordinance.
And that's not
our
the process,
requirement.
I guess, I'm referencing. I'm
It's
saying
wi-
after.
Well, that's the first step, right? So timelines build onto one another. So we have 60 days for advertising. At that point, we receive proposals, right? It closes. Depending on the number of proposals we receive, the county procedures state that we need to have a short list. If we're going to select one company, we shortlist 3, right? So it depends on the number of proposals received. We may need to do a shortlist, or we might be able to go to a final selection. The shortlist and the final selection, both of them, are set per county procedure, and they basically give an opportunity to the proposers to come and present the product they have. The shortlist, or the offer, the proposal, right? The shortlist is based on the documents received, no formal presentation. The final selection includes a formal presentation by the companies that are trying to get services. The committee that does the evaluation is set per county procedure as well. Once we make it to the final selection, at that point, all we have is a recommendation for award, because at the end, this board is the one that has the authority to award a contract. Once the selection committee makes a recommendation, then each one of our departments, whomever is running that RFP, enters into a negotiation process. And that negotiation process can be successful or not, right? We may end up getting a proposal, monetary, fiscal, financial proposal from the company that makes sense, and we can recommend as fair and reasonable, or negotiations may fail, in which case we go to the second-rank company. But assuming negotiations are effective and successful, we put together a contract. Most of our departments already have template contracts that we use that have been reviewed by the county attorney. During the negotiation process, we give the opportunity for those companies to raise any issues they may have with the contract. Hopefully that doesn't happen, and we have a straightforward process. Let us assume that's the case. At that point, we submit the agenda item for consideration by the board, and that process takes about 5 weeks to go from submission to final consideration by this board. You may remember that the last time we came in front of this board with the purchasing ordinance, we also brought a concept as to where we could streamline processes. And we did a full analysis of step by step what it takes to bring a contract to the Board of County Commissioners. And that's when we brought in the recommendation of it might benefit us to have the ability, following the county administrator's ability to put together the agenda for the workshops, to have items included as part of the workshops, right? Because our conclusion in doing that analysis was every step along the way is necessary. As we share at the beginning of this presentation with the board, we have a myriad of regulations, statutory requirements to comply with. So we cannot bypass it. The question then becomes, how can we move faster, still complying with everything we need to comply, and bring that end product here to the board? And our conclusion a few months ago was, well, if we have additional opportunities to be in front of the board, that might help us move the projects a little bit faster. We also brought the recommendation that this board approved to increase the signature authorities for the construction departments. So I tried to give a very comprehensive response, many steps along the way. Hopefully I answered the question.
If I may, just one second, if I may.
Yes.
You gave 2 recommendations on how we can speed the process. One is to come before the board more often, and second is for the board to give regulatory signature authority to others. Do you have any other recommendations that will, which is why we're here today, which will give your department an opportunity to speed the process so that more businesses can participate in county contracts, other than the 2 that you've already mentioned?
Aside from the 2 that we have mentioned,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
don't have any additional
You don't
today.
have any additional?
We have 3 additional potential delivery methods. that we will explain to the board that we're not recommending at this time, but we will explain the reasons. But we wanted to present a comprehensive overview.
Well, what we want and what the idea of, to look at your presentation today, is to get your recommendations, because you're the one in the field, your recommendations as to alternative delivery methods to accelerate and attain more efficient project delivery. So you have 2 recommendations so far. As we proceed in your presentation, if you have any more, please tell us, because this is the whole idea that we're here today. Let me recognize Ms. Baker.
We have, over the years, refined our process to try to move this along. We have recently went through a lot of discussions on how can we do this faster. We want to do it correctly, because when we try to do it too fast, steps are missed, people appeal, that delays it even further. So the 2 processes that we have already identified, one, you just approved because you approved the purchasing order. That's going to help us a lot. And we may come back to you as cost continues to escalate and ask you to consider making that even higher. Because that way, the department, the capital departments have signature authority. They push things through, we make sure they're good, and then we sign off and we can start the work. And then we put it on as a receive and file. That speeds up a lot. And then the allowing projects to be placed on the workshop agenda, which is going to make your workshops a little longer, that's another way to speed it up. But we have not come up with additional ways to speed up this process, knowing that we've got different funding sources, the feds, the state, and all of them have different requirements in addition to our own requirements in order to push forward contracts.
I appreciate that, Ms. Baker. What I'm looking for is the use of technology. I know that it was mentioned here, 4 to 5 days, 4 to 5 business days that you advertise goes into 60 days. Why, and I ask why. Because businesses operate on fast speed delivery that is correct. We have an additional layer of being transparent, which is difficult. However, can we not speed up this process of contracting with the county so that businesses can, more businesses, in a transparent and correct way? I mean, we're not the only business out there that contracts with subs, but what we need to do with the additional layer of having it transparent is to be sure that we use technology. And I don't see any use of technology in, just one second, Ms. Colatz, because this is a workshop, because maybe we, and I'm looking at my colleague, can help you, help the county get a little faster, a little more 21st century in processing these contracts. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to save this part of the conversation for when we tackle the binder that Vice Mayor has given us, but in that binder, there's copies of contracts that people who want to do business with us have to fill out. And, I was wondering about that in the process because it's lengthy. There's considerable amount that anyone who wants to bid work with us, that they have to go through. As part of this 60 days of out to bid, is that part to give them time to get through all of the requirements that we have? And how many of those requirements are us versus state or federal statute?
If I may, couple comments regarding the number of days. It comes back from ordinance, right? So the reason why we advertise for 45 business days is because we are required to under county procedures. Yes, it allows the companies an opportunity to review every single document that is part of that bid. And the logic behind the number of days is to ensure that bids are out there, publicized, and transparent, right? That large and small businesses get an opportunity to see what the county is competing and trying to retain services for. So that's the logic behind, at a higher level, behind that number of days to be on the street. Regarding technology, you may remember that as part of the purchasing ordinance, one of the revisions we proposed and this board approved was automation permitted, right? And I think that had us all, and still has us, very excited as to the possibility of transitioning many of our processes into an electronic format, right? Before and under the current ordinance is not authorized. We're moving forward that way. The ordinance that this board approved during the last meeting will come into effect in 6 months. So now we have a path forward to be able to implement other technologies that will facilitate the process.
If I may follow up.
Go right ahead, it's a
My-
workshop.
My question about the days, the 60 days, is that just a blanket 60 days, or does it matter by project? Because I can understand the Green Cave, like, that's a significant contract. We have other contracts that may not need that type of scrutiny. Is there a difference at all?
Let's talk about our annuals. Why don't we explain the annuals? Because that does speed up our process.
100% agree. The difference with the annuals is that we already have contractors pre-qualified. We still need to advertise. The base is the minimum that we share, okay? So that's where we start. With contracts that are already in place, pre-qualified, we're saving all the time of doing the evaluation of the qualifications of that company. So we have contractors that are already under contract, and we can just go ahead and issue a work order under those contracts. And that goes back to the concept of what other methods we have been implementing historically to try to move faster to the process. That is one. The CMR is another method because you're bringing the two components of the design and construction together. The trade contracts, where we, rather than having a general contractor do a plumbing work, we are going just to the plumbing companies or just to the HVAC companies, and we already have them under contract, and we're doing specialized work targeted to those trades, are means that we use to move forward the projects faster.
So the annuals don't have to go for 60 days? You can issue task orders?
We still need to advertise it. 30 days is the base standard. We need to keep it open as well. So the fact that you have some annuals already pre-qualified doesn't preclude others from joining. It goes public as well, but you already have a group of those that are pre-qualified and ready to bid, and know our processes, know our forms. They already have contracts. So what we bring, that's what this board usually sees the work orders, right? Which is a simplified document because the contract is already on file and they already know the processes to
And
follow.
all 5 departments have annuals?
The one that uses annuals is FDO, and it's a function of the type of services we provide. Different, and ARM does as well. So different to other missions, since we're serving everyone, it aligns, it's better suited for the type of operations we have. Deb, on your work, you use them for?
For a lot of our beach and dune work. And so we like to have those annual contracts ready to go to be able to issue task orders as needed for emergency work or materials of opportunity. Those kind of things come up. So we have found over the years that that is the best vehicle for us to most efficiently get contractors on board.
May I add to it? For water utilities, we do have 13 annual contracts, and that significantly lowered the time. What I provided was on a large project like Green Cave with $100 million, but with the annuals, we select them for 3 years, so the advertisement and everything is done upfront. So we go to them as needed, but there is a cap with the annuals. We only can do $4 million of construction with them. But that's good enough because I have 13 of them. So it covers all the different skill sets that we need.
And then I'd like to add, under engineering, a lot of resurfacing is done with the annuals. We have 2 current resurfacing contractors. Capacity of that contract is about $50 million. That contract is ready to expire. We've done over the past year, 2 years, about $35 million. We've got a new contract we're presenting to the board with 3 new vendors that will be recommending to the board for approval. But those are task orders. They have 41 unit prices, and so we'll issue a scope of work to that contract based on the unit prices in terms of lane miles and how deep we want in the mill. And then once that task order gets finalized, if it's below 200,000, we will issue it, basically with my authority. Above 200,000, we'll send that to the board for approval.
And that actually transitions us to the next delivery method, which is unit prices. So with unit prices, you have a set price for a given commodity type of service, and then you have a number of contractors that have already set unit prices to deliver the project. That's a little bit different from the annuals, from the HVAC contract, for example, where you have a company that is pre-qualified and your scope of work is changing depending on the work you're doing, but that company is already pre-qualified. So they bid on the project and we keep going. Hopefully that's clear. That's why we try to break them down by method, because each one works a little bit differently. So unless there are additional questions, we can
We
transition
do,
to
we have
unit.
additional
Yeah.
questions. This is a workshop, and I encourage the staff as well as all of the commissioners to ask these questions, because we get asked all the time by businesses and by our constituents. So this is a good time for us to have this dialogue. Commissioner Baxter,
Thank you,
go right
Mayor.
ahead.
So clearly, annuals don't seem to be the problem. We can plan for them, we know they're coming, so on. But what I guess we are referencing are projects that this board wants to complete that aren't part of an annual basis, that are continually coming up. And so that is, I guess, where most of my questions are coming from. We have a serious problem when projects are delayed, especially right now with inflation. So what starts out at one price, and because of our processes and our policies, because you said it's a county policy for these requirements, it's taking, let's say, approximately 6 months to get there. That's an extensive amount of time with pricing and availability and products these days. I think some, I don't know what the answer is, but to the mayor's point, we asked for your opinion on the best way to make these policies or our process more efficient. And I haven't really heard anything other than the two you had stated to come before the board more often, which, of course. But if that's the case, I mean, is there something that can be eliminated? Like, I don't know, do we have to get to the short list? Can we just say, all right, under a certain amount? I'm not saying I want to start with 20, 50 projects and not get to a short list. But if we're only starting with 5, is it really necessary to go through a whole process to get to a short list? That's a question.
So, may I? Yes, a couple comments to that, and my colleagues can add obviously as they deem appropriate. Few suggestions that we have brought to the table, some of which have already been authorized and are moving forward. The signature authority is one. We did a full evaluation of every step that it takes the contract to make it here, and that's where our recommendation about giving additional opportunities to come in front of the board came from. Automation is needed, and I think we all agreed on that coming from the staff perspective, and why we included that as part of the purchasing ordinance. To the comment as to where the requirements are coming from, it's a mixture. It's a portion that are statutory requirements that we have no way of walking around or trying to evade. We just need to comply and make sure that we are conducting selections in a manner that is compliant with state-level requirements. There are county procedures that can certainly be adjusted and revisited if needed to identify areas of potential improvement. As to the shortlist and the final selection, I will argue it's a balance, and you have asked for my opinion. When you're bringing to a final selection, you're having companies prepare and come in to provide typically a 30, 45-minute presentation, right? And staff, and it's a comprehensive committee that has many of the colleagues sitting at this table or our designees, are basically setting aside a day or two to just listen to presentations and conduct an evaluation. A short list is a means of being more efficient and not having to bring everyone to that day-long presentation. If we have 5 proposals, strictly speaking, that's 5 hours of just listening to the company without Q&A, questions and answers, without the actual review process. So on the plus side, a 2-step process allows to refine the group of those that are going to be required to go the extra mile, right? Those companies that will be required to prepare, to bring a presentation, to spend their time and resources in front of the county or representatives, right, to try to obtain county business. So it's a balance. I will argue aim towards trying to be efficient in the selection process and not bringing everyone to the table, but it can be revisited, to your point, if needed.
A follow-up, Mayor?
Go right ahead.
Would it then be possible, because we have to do this in our agenda reviews, if there needs to be a short list of, maybe they present to us on our schedule, and then we bring it to the board, and, have that discussion in public?
The
Is that
selection
possible?
process?
It's an idea. I don't
Okay.
know what the downside would be to that. But just, that way we're not stuck. Let's say if we want to meet with all these people, we can do it on our time, but then we get the information and we come here. We have them give maybe a shortened version. It's exactly what we do for most agenda items.
The board doesn't, and I may ask support from county attorney here, from Attorney Mike Jones. The board typically doesn't see all proposals that come through a selection process. They see the one that the committee is recommending at the end. We do have,
Let me interrupt you, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Why don't we? Can we? And secondly, should we? I don't know. I think maybe if it's on, look, I'm not asking to hear from all the companies, but when somebody says that we don't see it, maybe some of us or the public would like to be able to get on our website and say, these are all the companies that have requested to be in contract with Palm Beach, with our county government. Is that something that we do presently?
You should not do. No, that is not what we do presently,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Can we, and why, and if we, because I think at least if we have this transparency, I'm just looking at ABC company, EFG company,
Right,
just
with
so
no
that we know
presentation.
which companies want to do business with the county, and that would be transparent to the whole public. I think I don't see any reason why not. When it comes to transparency, I always go for, let's do it unless there's a compelling reason not to do it. And Ms. Baker, I'm looking at you.
We will do whatever this board gives us direction to do. I do not recommend we go down this avenue. I think there's a reason a lot of this is under staff's purview, and then we bring forth a product that the board sets policy and approve contracts. But if this board wants to see everything, we'll make it happen. I just think that adds even more. Your time, people are gonna wanna talk to you. When do we bring down the cone of silence? When do you get feedback? I don't recommend this, going down this road as your
And
administrator.
most respectfully, I'm not saying the board, I'm saying the public. If we could put on our, unless there's a compelling reason not to, on our PBC website, that these are companies that want to do business with the county. And this way, everything is transparent, unless there's, and I don't need to know their operations, or I don't, but at least to have the names of the companies that want to do business with us, in the light of perfect transparency.
may I
Of course,
add
go right ahead. I'm
something?
asking you, Ms. Colasso.
Selection meetings are public meetings, and the respondents are publicized, they're posted. We say,
Because it's already posted.
It is
So
a
I didn't know
process.
that. I thought you said that we cannot, or we do not see
What we do
it.
not do, the selection typically doesn't take place at the board level. And if I miscommunicated that, I apologize. That was not the intent. I thought the question was going through, can we bring those proposals here?
No,
That's
no, no. The question is, right now, is can the public see a list of companies that are coming before staff to get construction contracts?
And the answer to that is yes. For
Okay, so
every
we're going to do
RFP,
it
we
then.
do that.
And it's
Well,
already on or
It's
not?
already there as a part of the short list, as well as the selection
Final,
committee, the
yep.
final selection committee. If the board wants us to put up a list, as opposed to people having to go through the process of the short list, because we do keep minutes, along with the list, we can definitely, anybody that submits, we can put up a list for that particular project. We can do that. Now, that, again, add more work in addition to what we're already making public for staff. I have limited staff. We have a lot of projects. We have over 600 projects just in FDO. That's not including the rest of the departments. We have limited staff. We are swamped with work. It's not that we're not. And so every time I have a selection committee, I've got a group of folks that sit on that selection committee, and something in their area is not necessarily being done that day because they're spending time. And that's what you pay us for. So don't get me wrong. We don't have an issue with it. But I do want the board to, I want to share with the board what we're going through as far as the number of projects, trying to keep them on track, making sure we're pushing things through, and not even to mention the ones that are appeal, and we've got to step back and go through the appeal process for those. So everything we do is transparent. People are allowed to come sit in the selection meetings to hear what's going on. It's all public, and we advertise them. So we actually do that work. But if you want us to put down everybody that responded to an RFP, we can do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor, for the follow-up. How many times does the selection committee meet?
And typical process without any issues, twice, shortlist and final selection.
Forgive me, I should have been more specific. A week, a month? How often?
It is a function of the RFPs on the street, and each one of our departments is running its own processes. So I cannot tell you every week. We have multiple RFPs going at the same time, and meetings are being coordinated.
So selection committees are potentially happening
Every
daily?
week.
Weekly?
Potentially every day, every week, you may have, based on our departments, 2 or 3 selections happening, depending on the workload.
And is it all the same committee?
It is established by PPM, and yes, is set on position. And depending on the department that is running the RFP, there is the project manager and the designee from that department.
And how is the committee selected?
Established by PPM.
I mean, who puts the people on that committee?
The PPM actually reads, and I'm going here from memory, county engineer or its designee, director of the Office of Equal Business Opportunity or its designee. And there is a list for shortlist committee, and there's a list for final selection committee. Meaning to say, the members of the committees are preset per county PPM, are established.
And again, these are ideas, not end all. Question, would it help if we had, we have a lot of departments and a lot of different projects, to the administrator's point, going on. Would it help if we had specialized committees for the departments that says if an airport project comes through, this is the selection committee. If there's this roads projects coming through, this is that selection committee, to then maybe make it less burdensome and help?
That is already what the PPM establishes. So the PPM reads, here's your base committee, and then it has like 5 different sections, and it says for airport projects, here is the additional colleagues that join the committee. For FDO, here it is how it is
So it's not
comprised.
one committee then?
The base of the committee is one. Members that you're going to see in every committee: OEBO, county attorney, representative from county administration. If my colleagues can help me, I'm going here. Water utilities for yours, but base projects is engineering. You always have Steve Carrier sitting there. OFMB is contract management. Right now it's Brenda Sanashko. It used to be Erwin Jakobowitz. OEBO, those are base members, and then depending on the department that is running the project, you get the project manager and the lead from that department. So in FDO, for example, it will be Fernando Doldago, the project manager that is responsible for the project, and then our user department. So if I'm building for community services, I will have someone from James Green group sitting on that committee. For airports, Laura, if you can give one example.
It would be generally myself, Gary Sypek, our development director, Cindy Portnoy, including Steve Carrier, and again, the standard folks that come to all of the selection committee meetings.
So you have a group of colleagues that are base level, right? They go to every single selection because they're set by PPM. And then also set by PPM, you have another group of colleagues that are a function of the department that is running the RFP.
I just think today a better use, this is amazing, and so I want to say thank you for putting this together, but maybe bringing those PPMs that we are setting to us with ideas of some more efficiencies was, I think, the ultimate goal. How do we make within Florida statutes, how do we make our PPMs more efficient? Instead of me throwing out ideas that clearly I'm not the expert, and I don't claim, but that's what we rely on you to bring to us.
So if I may add, and I think it's just a matter of how multi-layered this topic is. A few months ago, we submitted a memo to the board with the CCNA process, along with the PPMs that support the same. We have, in the past few months, provided as well a staff report on different projects, which included the PPMs, right? So we have been trying to bring the different pieces together. I think this is the last one we had pending, bringing all the different components together. But we'll gladly address PPMs as a separate subject if needed. We have been bringing them step by step through different efforts. I think at the beginning of the presentation we share it's a multi-layer subject, without doubts, right? And it has input from many sources. And what we were attempting to do today was to bring them together and show the full picture.
And thank you for putting this together. I haven't really, other than the two things you stated, haven't heard regulatory authority and the other one come before the board more frequently. I don't mind coming before the board more frequently, but does that get to us, how much sooner does that get to us then?
When we brought the topic before, it was a matter of having an additional 12 opportunities throughout the year to bring additional comments. There is, items, sorry. There is another thing that we have mentioned before, I will repeat it, is automation. I think that is something that will make a difference and move us away from paper-based processes. And again, we still have 3 more delivery methods that are currently not being used. I don't think will be applicable here, but we wanted to share them with the board to show that we have looked at the entire universe. As we're doing this on a daily basis, I think all our departments continue to explore areas where we can cut in time and we can make the projects more efficient. And I'm going to give you an example based on construction projects. As we were dealing with the challenges that came from supply chain issues and how to make sure that we try to stay in front of the ball, so to speak. We adjusted, which is exactly what the private sector and other public entities have done. We adjusted when we were releasing the authorization to procure materials, right? To try to get ahead in that queue of the manufacturing work. That is something that was done on the administrative side and didn't need to come back to the board as part of the project. But those are the day-to-day decisions being made in management of the project that we do in order to try to keep them moving forward. I have shared with this board before, I'm gonna use an FDO project as an example. With supervisor of elections, we had a 32-week delay for the switch year. There was nothing we could do. It went from 53 to 85 weeks for delivery, and it was a major impact. To the extent that we can remain responsive to those changes and adjust while we are delivering project, it helps.
And forgive me, Estime, but that is once it's already started,
Yeah.
right?
It's thankfully so completed.
And I'm wrapping up, I promise. So how long do you think it's going to take for us to get automated?
We, in 6 months, we will be authorized under the new ordinance. I know that our colleague from the purchasing department is already exploring new systems that can be put in place so that bids can be received electronically, and that will be a major improvement. So we cannot do it before 6 months. I'm not saying we will be ready in 6 months, but I am saying the work, preparation work to make it happen is already ongoing.
If I may.
So the soonest we could possibly be automated is 6 months.
We're starting the process, if I may, Mayor. We are looking at processes, working with ISS to move things forward. We're looking at other software in case we can buy an off-the-shelf that works. We're constantly reviewing these processes. We've already started uploading our backup information in a more timely manner than what we have in the past. The only thing with uploading sooner, if things change, then we've got to change all the backup as well. And we also get some not happy customers at that. But we are working toward it, and we, hopefully when the 6-month hit, we're in a position where we can turn on a switch and start to move forward. But we also have to work with our partners on the outside, because they also have to have they must be automated enough that our systems are working together so that we're not ahead of them and we're not able to get their information, or that they're more advanced than we are, and we have to bridge that gap between when they're submitting things, such as permitting. I mean, COVID moved us much faster than we had anticipated, but we made that happen. So we're working with this process as well.
Mayor, can I make
Please,
a comment?
Mr. Bayat.
I appreciate it. We're talking about the delays in the project in general. And in my humble opinion, being with the county for 14 years, and I have done probably more than $500 million of construction so far. What we are seeing today, and I love to streamline our processes, please do not get me wrong, and I would love to cut time down as much as I can. But we are seeing something that we have not experienced in the past. For one project, for example, the Pahokee wastewater plant, we went out to bid 3 times because we can't find qualified contractors to do the job. There is a shortage, a huge shortage of the right contractors and engineers and project managers to do what they're supposed to do. Even the design engineers that we have, none of them can deliver work on time anymore because they're all receiving work from all these different municipalities, all the counties. All this federal regulation that came down on us, especially in the water industry, I can't find no engineer to do the job on time anymore. We've been advertising, nobody will apply. We have major projects that went out, we only received 1 bid, $9 million. I have to cancel it. I can't just go based on that. So these are slightly different versus what we had maybe 5 years ago. And I think that would, when you see the data, you will see it. A lot of delays is not because we didn't do it. It just we went out, nobody applied, nobody wanted the job. It's just not, we don't have that capacity. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bayat. Commissioner Baxter, if you're completed, I'm going to go now to Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. I have a question, with specifically in how we manage projects because of the issue with switchgears. And it's not just the county, I understand. It is every development project, not only in this country, but in the world, that can't get these devices. So my question is really, do you build around the fact that they're not, how delayed they are, or do you hold off on starting the project till you know you have the switchgear?
We have, and I will speak for FDO and then open the floor to the rest of the colleagues. We have been working with the design team and the CMRs in CMR projects, right? To create advanced package, basically. So try to expedite the design for that component, the order for that component, so that they can get in the queue, because it's a manufacturing issue. And that way, while everything else is being completed and finalized, that's already in line to be acquired, and hopefully closing the gap. That's the strategy that we use. To give you an example, working very, very closely with the teams in Roger Team. So last year, we gave them an authorization to start procuring the elements, the electrical components, because otherwise you're not going to meet the deadline. So rather than waiting, because you need to get in line, what we have been doing is trying to expedite those components so that they can catch up with the rest of the project, so to speak.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I guess the concern I have is that because of the delay, my understanding of what these switch gears are, I mean, everything can be done except that device being installed and then finishing the project. Is that the rest of the project doesn't, if there's more to the project than just the switch gear, that the project move forward because the other costs are going to continue to accelerate, or we may have trouble getting the contractors to, at the time we need them to do that job.
And that's why we have been trying to adjust and get ahead of the line in that queue. Theoretically, almost the entirety of the project can proceed, but the reality is not the entirety. Why? And I'm going to oversimplify intentionally. So the switchgear controls your electrical, your power into the building, simple as that. If I don't have it there, I cannot turn on the HVAC system. And if I cannot turn on the air conditioner, we are in South Florida. I'm not going to complete finishes. Right. They will get damaged. So that's a challenge we encounter in HRC2, in the Central County Housing Resources Center. We had everything ready, so to speak, and we needed to wait a few weeks to get the electrical component to then finish up so that we're not wasting in materials and labor, right? So it has become, I'm going to call it a little bit of an art to balance the two, to balance when those components are going to come here, and that's done by our contractors, right? What we're managing on our end is the contract, it's the authorization to say, go ahead and order so that everything else catches up. And that's our role on the management side.
Yeah, I will just share that, you know, it was almost 2 years for my roof to get replaced. You know, I had one contractor, you know, we'd gone out, we got one contractor, took the deposit, came back, you know, and started on the process, and then decided they didn't want to do the job anymore. And that took, you know, I think that was about 6 or 9 months. So then we had to go back out, get a new contractor, and of course, then they had to go back through, change the permits, and basically start over. And then then the city decided we need to have different kind of tile on our roof. So then we had to go out and source those tiles, and that took, I can't remember how many months. But it's everything. I think part of it is, you know, you've got so much, I mean, we're competing with everybody. You are, as the county, you're competing with me as a, you know, private person trying to get a roof put on a building. I mean, it's challenging, and unfortunately, the alternative is we have a really poor economy, because back in 2008, you could get contractors in a minute. And in fact, you know, there were people lined up. And now today, we can't, you know, because there's so much work, they can, you know, it's a supply and demand issue. But we don't want to be out of balance either way. I mean, that's a challenge. And they don't want to grow too big, because they went through what we all went through in 2008, where they got too big, and then they had to cut back.
And there is another variable, if I may mention, if you allow me, that as staff, we do have a responsibility to recommend prices that are fair and reasonable, right? And sometimes demand drives prices, right? So I think we all may have been in the position, I know I have, where I have bid out a project, my staff has, and when those results come back, it just doesn't feel right, right? So at that point, we say, okay, we're rebidding this. We review everything because they might be too high, right? And we feel that after doing the entire analysis, we cannot recommend that as fair and reasonable. So it's a matter of striking a balance between all or amongst those variables. The other thing that I would like to share with this board, I think we all, on a daily basis, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, we do constant benchmarking and outreach with our peers, right? And it's kind of the conversation of, what are you seeing that I am not? Do you have any other alternative that you are taking and using and putting into effect that we can consider as well? And especially we tap into the management firms, that project management firms that we have under contract, because they're here to provide us services, right? And they have the benefit that they provide services, some of them state level and others nationally, right? So we have directly asked them, what are you seeing in other places? What other tool can we bring to Palm Beach County to try to get ahead of every other variable that we have in the market? That's an ongoing exercise, right? It's not, those are the day-to-day details that typically don't come in front of the board, right? But that we're juggling with on a daily basis, trying to make sure that we're hitting the expectations and bringing a product that meets what this board expects from county staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodward, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important for us to go back to slide 9,
9?
please. I was going to save this for the end, but. Okay, I can't wait that long. We have to. You have listed here, and I know the list is not comprehensive, which is important for all of us to understand. There's 16 Florida statutes listed and 5 Palm Beach for us. It just, if you go and look at the very first one, just pull it up, 255.103. On my phone, it's lengthy, and I've counted, I believe, 17 hyperlinks within that particular statute that refers to additional statutes, that refer to additional statutes. This entire system, And again, I'm bringing up the binder, the wonderful binder that you gave us. When I read through it, sitting in my living room, I actually looked at my husband and was like, why would anyone ever bid with us? And it's not necessarily because of us and decisions that we make. These are decisions that are put onto us, which means all of the processes and procedures we have to put forward by law above us. Honestly, don't know how we get anything done. And I agree, we should find a better way, but is it even within our purview to do so? Because we are bound by, I don't even know, this is not a comprehensive list. Even just going on here, like I said, 17 additional statutes within the very first one that is listed as construction management. So my only hope for this moving forward, we keep talking about technology, and if we can get ourselves to, it's gonna take something like an AI, where we could have a closed system, a firewalled system AI, where we can put all of this into it and help us manage this. And then, same thing for our contractors to be able to manage through this, because it's overwhelming. I read the whole binder, thank you for that, and completely overwhelmed. I don't know how you ever get anyone to bid with us. And those who do bid with us, thank you, please continue to do so. But this is overly complicated. This is a complex system that has been made complicated by rules that we don't decide on. And I'm just going to put that out there for all of us. We should understand what we're having to navigate, what you have to navigate. And contractors out there, if they could go to the private industry and bid, I don't blame them, because they don't have to, they're not bound by the same rules that we are. And that's my last thing to say about Tallahassee. I did have one question, though, on the, okay, well, yeah, pile on to, where's Mr. Bernard here, so our commissioner, we can make sure he's listening. If he makes it to Tallahassee, he should be listening to this.
Better.
However, on slide 10, you do have listed about, I was looking for, we have the Prompt Payment Act, which we talked about making sure that the payments are there. But I know there comes a time where we may need to assess liquidated damages. Is that allowed in the statute for us to have time to go through?
And
Okay.
our contracts provide for liquidated damages. It's part of our standard contract, and
But
yes.
to get to that number, because as I understand it, when a contract finishes, they're going to tell us all of the reasons for the delays, the states of emergency, the supply chain issues, there was a hurricane over on the West Coast or something, all of this stuff will be counted and gives days added to their contract. How much time do we have to go through and assess the legitimacy of the claims?
Okay, so prompt payment applies when a pay application is received. So in very simple terms, and county attorney, please correct me if I am mistaken, it basically says, county, once you receive this payment application, you have 30 days to issue payment, okay? Liquidated damages is something that we calculate at the closeout of the project. And under our contracts, as a standard, as a contractor, when you are requesting or applying for additional work, change orders, and the like, you are required to bring compensation and time at the same time, right? In the same document. So as we're moving through that project, we know if you contractor are behind the schedule, if you're delayed, and we're tracking those days. As we make it to close out, that's the final reconciliation. At that time, we already have the dollars per day set. So at that time, if you're 30 days behind, we multiply and say, okay, here are your liquidated damages, is $2,000 or whatever it might be in total. Yes, we handle at the end of the project every single request that anyone can bring to the table, and I'm saying that with a smile. And when we bring change orders or any type of recommendation to this board, that's the end product. It doesn't bring the discussion, the back and forth that we have had with the contractors. When staff recommends an extension, it's because it is founded in the contract and is warranted by the contract. This board does not see all those that we do not recommend, all those that become an exchange between the contractor, the design team who provides construction administration services, saying, contractor, we hear you, but this is not allowed under the contract. You do not have a right to request those 30 additional days, or you do not have a right to ask for additional compensation for X because it was already covered under your contract, or it was part of your risk if you're a CMR, or you needed to use contingency and you have completely depleted the contingency, so you don't get additional compensation. All those conversations take place in the day-to-day, and usually, to your point as to the liquidated damages, final comes at closeout, when every single request has been reviewed and assessed, and a decision has been issued on the same.
So throughout the life of the project, they are giving us the delays and the reasons, so we know. It's not like at the end, here's a folder of all of our delays.
Exactly. Through the project, they're required to keep moving the project. I will, and I say this out of experience, and my colleagues can please take the lead as well. Towards closing, we do get a few more, right, as we're trying to wrap that project. But throughout the project, as we're evolving, there is a requirement to submit additional days. If you have a delay, to submit notifications saying, hey, I was not seeing this, but now I have a notification from my manufacturer that I may have an impact on the schedule. And that's an ongoing requirement. Complex projects typically require a little bit longer for closeout because we're dealing with quite a few documents, and we actually have a slide showing that come together to ensure that we can close out the project in the correct way.
Is there a certain time they have to tell us if they're getting close to the contingency fund maxing out? Or do we just find out when it's?
No, we track contingency funds, and every time, and this applies for CMR contracts or construction manager contracts. It is a CM contingency, but in order for them to draw against the contingency, they need to have authorization from the county, right? So we're keeping track and saying out of the $1 million you had, for example, we approve a contingency use directive, and now you have 980 left, right? And that contingency use, as we explained before, is limited to a certain set of conditions under contract. That means that once it is depleted, right? The CM has nowhere else to go if it's a matter that was covered under contingency. That's part of the risk. That's why it's a CMR.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my comments, except for anyone from Tallahassee listening. Maybe they should have to run one project through their rules, and this might get better.
I'm sure our lobbying team is going to hear this. Thank you very much.
Mayor, may I
Commissioner.
make a comment
Yes, of
just on
course, go ahead.
the schedule process? So when we bring a project to the board and board approves it, we issue the NTP right after that, the notice to proceed. And then we have the first progress meeting with the contractor. The day one, the schedule gets established. So we're tracking it from day one to substantial completion all the way throughout the project. And depends on the type of the project and size of the project, we can meet monthly, we can bi-weekly, check all the different changes and schedule as toward the end of the project. Halfway through, we know where we're gonna end in this project and we're gonna have LDs or not.
Just to follow up, is that
Go
with
ahead.
the design build, or both?
Any of the
them?
processes, regardless, across the board, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor, but I think Commissioner Weiss actually had something he wanted to comment to
He
what
does,
Marcy
but
said, so
your
I
light
can.
was on first. If
That's
you'd
all
like
right.
to
I'd
wait.
like to defer to Commissioner Weiss so he can answer some of Marcy's IT and AI comments, questions. Is that where you, yeah, okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, I think to understand, I mean, both when you're automating a system or changing how you're automating a system, I'm sure you've all been through it, and not sure everyone else here has, but you've got to run dual systems. You've got to run the old system and the new system, whether it's manual or whether it's automated. They both got to run concurrently for a period of time until you get the new system stabilized, and so it's a big deal for a period of time because you're having to put out at least twice as much work. I think in running and then on the other side, and you touched on it, is if our contractors, suppliers, and vendors can't interact with our system, then it means that we're going to have to take our staff to change over what they're doing to match our system, which is going to, it complicates things. You don't get the benefits that you would. I mean, if everything was 100% internal, then you have control over it. But when you have to deal with externalities, like in the case of going outside, it can really bog you down unless they're compliant. And if you want to make this available to everybody, or as many people as possible, then you need to keep the system as simple, but because not everybody can afford to have that access to that technology. So it's not easy. And I just wanted you to know, we appreciate that, knowing that we know, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized. Your light was off, Vice Mayor.
No, I
Now
borrowed.
your light, okay, go right ahead, Vice Mayor.
Okay,
And then Commissioner Baxter.
thank you. Thank you for saying that you are talking to other counties and businesses, because that actually was one of my questions. And, you know, we don't work in a vacuum, but we don't know if what we're doing is right or wrong unless we're comparing with somebody else. So I appreciate you sharing that information. As for the process itself, I don't believe that the county commissioners should be part of the process in the choosing of who it is. I think that becomes too political. You know, the final that's our purview, and I believe that's the way it should stay. As for speeding up the process, we're all for that. And it's almost like, okay, before COVID, how long did it take? And now how long does it take? Because we're in a time frame where we've never been. And employment levels are so low right now, we can't even find people to work. And you see it everywhere, whether it's construction or food and beverage or hospitality or anywhere you go, and everybody's jumping ship because they can get more money somewhere else. And so why even deal with the county when you probably can make more money somewhere else? So we need to make the process as friendly as possible. And, you know, we can say all those words and everything like that and impress upon you that that's what we want. But I do appreciate that you do try to think outside the box, because that's necessary for us to do our jobs up here and make sure that everybody is employed and contracts are paid. And I also know from the, when there is a force majeure or any of that, and it extends everything, developers also take advantage of that too, as opposed to the other way around. You know, oh, good, we don't have to do anything for 6 months. We don't have to, you know, whatever. So we are beholden to Tallahassee. And, you know, Marcy, thank you for reading the book. I'm not sure we're going to get to it today because Mac's not here. But, you know, it is difficult for what we do because an awful lot of what we do is already set in statute. And, you know, our PPMs need to be seen by us and reviewed by us, and that's what you're trying to do. You all are in a difficult situation. And that ironically, it puts us in a difficult situation, because then we get the emails and the phone calls about how come I haven't gotten paid, and why doesn't the CRM, why can't we raise the levels of the CRM so they can stay as small businesses type of thing. So I'm sure we all are going to have a whole lot more questions. So we could probably drag this on a little bit longer, but I don't think we need to. If we do have some more questions, I will be happy to submit my own questions to you, and then you can answer the questions as a board. But also, thank you for what you're doing. This is a heavy task. Mr. Ricks, I actually have a compliment for Mr. Ricks, by the way.
Let's take the compliments first.
Go right ahead.
Go ahead.
So, just like Ali talked about, Ismi talked about procurement, like Ali talked about, and Ismi talked about procurement issues, the recent Donald Ross Bridge is a case in point. That was a major renovation. You know, our staff said, hey, we need to do a major upgrade. Went through the design process, $5.7 million. Once we awarded the contract, we found out from a procurement standpoint, it was going to take over a year to get the materials. And so we delayed him doing the work until he got the material. Then we got the materials, and we had the recent closures, as we well speak. And even with those larger components, we have little hiccups, and we had some issues with the east side on the bridge because they inspected the components in the shop factory, shipped it, and when they installed it, when they started operating the bridge, they found that there was an issue with the components. They flew the factory reps out that next day on site to go through that, and they took it apart, put it back together, and get the east side open. On the west side, they got their lessons learned, and once they got the materials on site, these large pistons.
And they're large.
Yeah, large pistons. They re-inspected those components on site, and then got them installed, and we were able to get it, ahead of schedule. But procurement on everything, just like she's talking about transformers and other things, it's a challenge that we have to deal with, and we just had to work around stuff.
And that my compliment to you and your staff and the engineers and the electricians and the bridge tender is that you use the lessons learned on one side to deliver the product a week early on the other side. So I do appreciate that, as do all the people in the North End who, all those keyboard warriors that we heard talked about at lunch today. They have been very thankful that the bridge is now running properly on both sides. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple questions for you. Of the statutes on 9 and 10, it looks like, are any of them within, the last 5 years or so, 10 years? Or have these kind of been standard for a while?
I cannot answer that question top of my mind. Mike, any chance you can help me there?
Just off the top of my mind, a couple were new, 255-0911 and 2 were new. But, I think generally CCNA and general requirements for construction contracts or construction bidding and bonds and things of that nature have been out there for a while.
And so, thank you for that. And so when people are doing this daily, day in and day out, I say the mother of all skill is repetition. They probably, I would assume, have these memorized, GCs, so on, people who do this work continually. Is that a fair assumption?
I will say if they have been in this business, they're familiar with them.
And so how many people or contractors were applying for these, our jobs? How many people were bidding on the jobs, let's say 10 years ago?
That number, top of my head, I don't have it available. I can give you as a point of reference. We are seeing in our annuals, right now I think I have 31 pre-qualified contractors under minor construction. That's a significant number. That's a good thing we want to see, right?
Forgive me, SME, but there were somebody was saying you're putting out some jobs and aren't even getting bids on them.
And that's
But yet in 2008 and 9, we had an abundance of bids.
Certainly, but the annual contracts as well as they are currently in place in FDO, they are kind of a newer iteration, right? It is a very similar exercise to the one we're doing today was done in 2015, interestingly so, by my predecessor putting together the delivery methods we currently have. So very similar conversation at the time. The fact that we have vendors that are willing to come pre-qualified, familiar with the system is a good sign, right? Second step is bidding out. And bidding out, their response will be a function of the volume of work they have, right? So we may have companies that say, yes, I would love to do business with the county, but when the bid comes out, they already have so much work on their plates that they decide not to respond with that bid. They continue to get our advertisements because they're pre-qualified, and when time becomes a good timing for them, they submit a bid. And Ali, you are the one that brought the example.
So, well, hold on, Ali, I think, I don't want to keep dragging this out, so I'm trying to get through these fairly quickly, believe it or not. So if our other surrounding counties, are they getting contractors bidding on their stuff then that are leaving Palm Beach County? If we're talking with other counties? Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Baxter, the issue is nationwide. There's situations, some of the counties even worse than us. Tampa Bay, for example, they put projects out, nobody even bid on it. Back in 2006, 2007, all the way to 15, 16, we were putting a project, a pipeline project, just a regular pipeline project, we would receive 5, 6 beds. We very lucky these days if we get 1 or 2, if we get 1 or 2.
I guess my question is, if surrounding counties, right, are getting bids, or we were getting them back then, have we changed anything that has made it more difficult and more cumbersome than surrounding counties to where people wouldn't want to bid, that contractors wouldn't want to do business with us?
And the answer to that, based on my experience and my exchanges with other colleagues, will be no. We're all facing exactly the same challenges. I have not heard from my peers anything that is different from the reality we are facing. And peers, I'm defining that as colleagues in other counties, and I'm also defining that as peers within the county. My conversations with school board, with SWA, right, in different conferences we have attended. I think we're all facing the challenges with volume of work, right? Everyone has a project out there, and everyone is competing to get those contractors. Labor shortage, availability, supply chain issues. I think we are all fighting or facing, I wouldn't like to say fighting, the same challenges.
And I guess to your point of labor shortages, whether it's with the county or it's with, contractors, I think it has been a huge issue. And I wish Administrator Baker was still here because I was going to ask. This has come up quite frequently, and we're having a huge issue with people leaving the county. And I guess last time this happened was, I think, over 5 years ago, and they did a study to look at how are we comparing paying. So it might be time to kind of address that maybe again. But again, if Administrator, when she returns.
Yeah, that's the Evergreen study that was done, I want to say 2021, 22, if my memory serves me well. I also believe that recently, in addressing precisely construction-related matters and technical departments, engineers were revisited engineering classifications were revisited in order to stay competitive. There is a challenging market out there. I don't think we can sugarcoat that, if I may say so respectfully. And that's why we complement and supplement the resources we have with our contract project management firms, with our own staff in-house, trying to balance that workload.
So now that the administrator is here, I was just mentioning, if we're having a problem keeping employees, is it time to maybe look at surrounding places and see how we can keep them? Because if it is affecting our process and our daily ability, this is a real problem.
Yes. When I became the county administrator, it was painfully obvious to me that we needed to do an overall study, which was the Evergreen, and the board approved it. So we phased that in because that was a costly study. However, COVID helped a lot of our more seasoned people retire early, and we felt a huge void. Engineers, planners, financial folks. And so we're going through that process. I've upgraded the engineers because I cannot compete with the private sector, but I got to pay them more because we're losing certain key positions to
Forgive me,
cities.
Administrator, but at what point do we say we can't compete? Not even private sector, we're talking about the municipalities as well.
I am increasing, looking at them, and I have HR doing studies that I have to support the actions I'm taking. Otherwise, you're going to get calls and you're going to ask me, what am I doing? And I need to make sure that I've got the backup documentation to support what I'm doing. So we are addressing engineers. They're short in demand, and so therefore all of us are suffering. The private sector is suffering on getting licensed engineers, which they get to pay more, but the rest of us are as well. So there are positions that we're looking at, we're upgrading. I have to play within the rules of this board. I will bring you things when I can justify it. One of the things that I look at every day is our airports department. A lot of airports are separate utility authorities, so they're paying $400,000 and $500,000 to their director. I work for a government, and I can't afford to pay that, but she's worth every penny of that and more. So those are things that I balance when I come to you with the budget, and we will continue to look at that. We will continue to review, and I would venture to say in another year, we need to do another overall study of our positions here in the county. It's costly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd just like to say, I appreciate everything that you were just bringing up, because to me, it proves there is a group of contractors or businesses who are well-versed in how this system works. But I don't believe whenever the private sector is our competition, that number's not going to grow. Why would they invest in trying to figure out how this works when they can bid private work and get the job done, and, it's a different process altogether. So, I mean, we have to kind of realize who our competition is, with getting new contractors to bid with us. And we do have a limited number of contractors who know how to work within the system. I don't see that number growing until the private sector dries up, and which means, that means hard times in a lot of different areas that none of us want to think about. But that type of a recession is honestly what I think it would take for us to build up what we're asking for. And with prices, even if prices are the same, if the private jobs pay the same as what we're willing to pay, but the regulation is way less work for them, they're going to go the other direction. And even ones who are well-versed in our system, if they have the opportunity to go for a private sector job, they're going to. So that it's just, I don't have a solution. I don't really have a question. I just kind of want to put it out there that I feel we need to understand the reality of what we're working with here, that the system itself, I believe, is our biggest hindrance.
May I, if I may,
Of course, go right ahead.
Thank you. I think there's another step that is often overlooked, but it's part of the process, and it's part of what contractors sign up when they bid on a county project or a government project, I will say. You're done with the project, you close out the project, and then you're subject to auditing, right? That's very peculiar with public contracting. That's not the norm in the private sector, right? The private sector may go for an audit if there is something that looks maybe a little bit off point, but with government, it's a fact. So there is a requirement to keep files and records for 3 to 5 years, and at any given point, you may be subject to go back and reopen that entire project to look at every single detail. And I will argue that's okay, because we're government and we're dealing with taxpayers' money, right? But it adds to the complexity of what dealing with projects is, and why we say we need to dot every I and cross every T.
Thank you so much, Ms. Colasso. Ms. Baker.
I don't want to frighten any contractor that's out there listening.
Don't. I'm going to turn your light off right now.
So I want to make sure that they know we appreciate them, that we work with them. If there are issues, it starts at the department level, it makes it up to my office. We resolve those issues as much as possible. So we want to continue to work with our private sector partners. We want them to know that we're looking at processes every day to try to streamline what we can, but stay well within the law. So I want them to know we do want to work with them, and they can always show their grandchildren the projects that they worked on in the public sector.
Excellent. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you said that, because another point that was made to me by a contractor who does work with us is the county will always pay. So
Yes.
that just,
Oh, yes.
we're statute bound, we have the money, we will pay you. So you don't have to worry about not getting your check too.
This is an excellent workshop, because I think that every contractor out there, or every small business contractor, should look to us to want to do business, because this is what this whole idea of this discussion was programmed for. And I want to thank my colleagues, but I especially want to thank staff. And I just want to just refer to page 44, which reminds me of my third grade classroom. A couple of years ago, we need to make sure that we have a laptop on there somewhere. It concerns me a little bit, but I know with Commissioner Weiss's good background in AI that we can make our delivery systems and our information systems streamline with 21st century technology. And I appreciate if you let us know, please, what ordinances, because we can change ordinances. There are a list of ordinances that you refer to in your very, very comprehensive program that you gave us for today. Tell us what ordinances you need changed, and we will work with you to get them changed. To streamline the process, I'd like to see more small businesses, minority businesses, county, even if they come from Miami-Dade, we welcome them here in Palm Beach County. So I'd like to see that list of companies that have requested to do business with us. I don't need to know anything more, but I want that transparent so everybody can see it. And then talk to us about what ordinances that we can help, that we can change. We can change them. And what we can do to help you deliver these wonderful contracts and the construction more efficiently, more technologically based, and better for the people of Palm Beach County. With that, I think we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we'll start on the next project. Thank you so much, everybody.
You think?
I was actually about to come in and saying God bless you.
That's right. Exactly. I'll wait, just wait.
Staff, thank you very much for all the hard work.
What's the matter?
I think I've just been turned off. No? Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the continuation of the afternoon session of May 21st, 2024. And we are moving on towards this last part of the agenda, and that is 4C, opioid settlement. And we're going to move forward at this time. And if there is any tech person, my count, it's on, but it's not projecting. Right. So I know I probably talked too much. That's probably why it's not working. But if we could have a tech person come up and check it out, that would be good. Right now, we're going to hear a staff report. And and I thank you for providing us with a very comprehensive department review of the behavioral health and substance use disorder. Wow, that is cool. I like that. Plan 2024, and I think this is, of course, what we're going to proceed on today. And because of the late hour, I'm sure you will be able to streamline it. Because if anybody wants to see it in greater depth, they're more than welcome to review it from what you have provided to us and the public. So we have many, many cards. And we're going to move right through those cards so folks can get home before dinner. Let's put it that way, right, folks? First of all, I want to thank you all for staying so late. It's been a long day for you. It's been a long day for us. But together, this is the way government works, and we're not going to stop anything. We're going to move forward. So you're recognized, staff.
Thank you, Mayor. My notes say good morning, but I'll change that to good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Tammy Fields, Assistant County Administrator. Also at the table today are Dr. James Green, John Hulick, and Taruna Malhotra from the Community Services Department, and I want to acknowledge Annie Halfant from the County Attorney's Office. Today, we are very pleased to present the 2024 Behavioral Health and Substance Use Disorder Plan, along with preliminary recommendations on the opioid settlement. It's really appropriate that we're presenting this plan in the month of May. That is Mental Health and Trauma-Informed Care Month, and Taruna and I made sure we stayed in green. And in the audience today, that have stayed for the whole day are many members of the Behavioral Health, Substance Use, and Co-occurring Disorders Advisory Board. And if it's okay with you, I'd like them to stand and be acknowledged.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I know some of them did have to leave this morning. This advisory board, many of who have very personal experience with the devastation caused by opioids, has worked tirelessly with county staff on this plan and the recommendations. Maureen Killian of Southeast Florida Recovery Advocates is the chair, and Reverend Way Whiteley is the vice chair, and we're extremely appreciative of their dedicated service. I'd also like to thank county staff from the Youth Services Department and Fire Rescue who have contributed to this plan. The plan before you today carries out the past board direction to implement a person-centered, recovery-oriented system of care. It expands some of the past plans that you've approved to more fully address behavioral health issues as well as the substance disorder issues, which we all recognize are frequently co-occurring. It is also very much substance neutral, recognizing that no matter the drug of choice, the focus on the social determinants of health is essential for recovery. Crack cocaine addictions and other addictions preceded opioid addictions. These addictions were often concentrated in low-income communities and communities of color. And the past approach was arrest them away. And we know from research that that approach does not work. Big Pharma drove the opioid crisis and has been held somewhat responsible through the settlement. I don't know if anybody will think that they were held fully responsible. And quite frankly, we do not know what drugs may become available during the 18-month period of time, or 18-year period of time when we will be receiving settlement funds. So it's very important that we allow flexibility to address changing needs. We're very fortunate in Palm Beach County to have many resources, but the key is making sure our resources are cooperating in coordination and addressing the needs of each individual. There must be a continuum of services starting with education and prevention, early interventions, treatment, and most importantly, supports for continued recovery. And all of the partners in the system of care have a role. One of those partners is the Healthcare District, who is represented today. And outside of the opioid settlement dollars, the board has already committed $10 million in ARPA recovery funds for a central receiving facility, and we will be bringing that contract to you within the next month or two. At the conclusion of the presentation, staff really looks forward to your input and recommendations. The final plan will come back for adoption, as will any allocations for funding. And I did want to note that there were some very slight modifications in the PowerPoint, and you've all been provided with an update, and you'll see purple tabs where there's a little bit of the changes. And at this point, I will turn this over to Dr. Green to begin.
All right. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So I'm going to begin this presentation with just some overall statistics, and then I'll turn it over to John Hulick, who will discuss some of the recommendations. I'll talk a little bit about some of the committees and those recommendations, and John will focus more on the opiate settlement recommendations. And so we'll wrap it up with any questions and answers that you may have. So we'll start with page 2, and just looking at some statistics, you'll see that Florida is ranked number 1 when it comes to adults with mental illnesses, and then number 11 when it comes to adults who have substance use disorders. And we're ranked number 13 when it comes to youth with mental illnesses, and 13 with youth who have substance use disorders as well. But when we look at suicides, according to the medical examiner's office, suicides are down from the previous year. You'll see where this past year was 232, and year over date is down, I think, another 7% from last year at this time, which is good. We're trending in the right direction there. When we look at page 4 in our overdoses, we'll see that overdoses are also trending in the right direction. We're down to 494, with fentanyl being the number 1 reason for overdoses, and year to date, we're also down about 37% according to the medical examiner's office.
Okay, now I will pick up from here, and with respect to the prior slides, the advisory
Could you
committee.
state your name, please, for the record?
John Ulick, Community
And your-
Service Department.
Very good, thank you, sir.
I feel like I'm at home, I guess.
You are.
Thank you. With respect to the prior slides, the advisory committee, again, in this plan has affirmed its position that one overdose death is one overdose death too many, and one death by suicide is also one too many. In addition to this tracking, the advisory committee supports measuring initiatives through a recovery capital framework and its ability to capture resilience, health, well-being, and risk factors. In this regard, the system of care foundational elements are rooted in the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's definition of recovery from mental disorders and/or substance use disorders. And that is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Also from the 4 major dimensions that support a life in recovery: health, home, community, and purpose, as well as the agency's recognition resilience is a key component of recovery. A resilience and recovery ecosystem approach to care has been developed, and it's detailed on page 43 of the plan and as well as Appendix A. In sum, it identifies the needs of the individual, improves care with linkage efforts across all health domains, and informs public payers of appropriate level of care purchases, resulting in anticipated cost savings that can be reinvested in prevention and other social determinants of health. And the next slide, and I won't go hugely into detail, but the county has utilized what we call recovery capital indexing to measure risk and resilience, which provides a comprehensive picture of a person's whole well-being. We've integrated this measuring instrument both at provider level, and right on through to utilizing the data as a means of doing government-informed decision making. More than 6,500 or 4,600 surveys have been completed by individuals since the inception of the deployment of this instrument, and we have a more than 95% completion rate. Respondents are telling us that there is low support in the workplace, insufficient housing and transportation, low access to and high cost to health care. With the vendor conducted a regression analysis, and we've found that health and wellness, there is a high correlation between health and wellness and the overall RCI score, followed by a number of other, what we call indicators, other factors. We've also engaged Florida Atlantic University as a research partner, and they have also found similar strong and predictive relationships using the Recovery Capital Framework in the county's Federal Department of Justice funded program for justice-involved individuals. The good news, going on to the next slide, is Palm Beach County has removed itself from its storied past and now has distinguished itself as leaders in person-centered, recovery-oriented, and crises care. This is owed to the many decisive actions that have been taken by the Board of County Commissioners since 2017. Importantly, by establishing the advisory committee in November of 2022, which the board charged to make service and opioid settlement recommendations through an annual plan. And if I might speak a moment, and I'm so glad Tammy raised and asked the members to stand. It is very personal to many of us, I know, up on the dais, as well as those in the audience and here at this table. And as noted in the executive summary, the individuals with lived experience are particularly grateful in the faith that you have in them in this decision-making process. They have experienced fragmented systems and hope the research-based recommendations presented today honors those lost as the county moves forward from crisis-focused to person-oriented solutions. The members also recognize that amongst us today, including myself, there are those who have experienced their own loss and suffering. For those comes our deepest condolences. The plan was built on the 2022 plan foundation and continued the well-established process of receiving community member input through bi-monthly facilitated subcommittee meetings and community forums. The 2024 plan draft was released prior to the committee's March meeting, and that was followed by a 2-week public comment period. And after that period, department staff as well as our FAU researchers conducted a content and thematic analysis of nearly 150 suggestions. You can imagine the work that entailed, with each response granted equal weight. The specific themes were identified and brought to the committee, and they were subsequently considered by the committee and incorporated into the final plan that you have before us today. It's important to understand that the subcommittee work is first reflected in what we call our theory of action. You can imagine, I've heard a lot of business talk, you can imagine the research and development, the brainstorming. It's at that level where lots of ideas around identifying what the problems are, identifying strategies, and then also identifying how we would measure or evaluate these strategies. From that point, the subcommittees also were charged with identifying what we called subcommittee priority recommendations. And you can imagine amongst those 8, probably about 24 or more separate subcommittee priorities. The committee then gleaned through that and identified from that overarching, what we call overarching priority recommendations. So amongst those 24, there were 3 or 4 that were identified as what we call overarching priority recommendations. And that process also informed the opioid settlement recommendations. The plan itself details initiatives and outcomes, makes service and opioid settlement recommendations supported by research and viewed through a recovery capital framework. Never far from anybody's mind was being mindful that the settlement funds have been realized due to pharmaceutical malfeasance, resulting in untold loss, death, and devastation wreaked upon individuals, families, and communities. With that said, the committee's overarching priority recommendations are found on this slide, and the 2022 plan, one of the high priority recommendations was for the board to establish an advisory committee. So thank you for allowing that task to be completed and to charge the committee as you have. This time, we believe that is a good start, yet the committee also believed that there's more work to do. And so one of the recommendation you see at the top of the list is for the county to support, lead and or support comprehensive planning process between the major funders and planners in the behavioral health and substance use disorder place. Second, you see the advocacy, the continued advocacy for policies and legislation, and we want to see more resources, obviously, not just county tax resource or opioid settlements. And I do know for a fact, because I received a call over the weekend from the Assistant Deputy Secretary of HHS looking at what Palm Beach County is doing, particularly around recovery orientation. So we're glad that our efforts are being viewed in very positive ways. Thirdly, you see identify and provide sustainable resources, what we call essential services. The 17 plan, which was the lead plan, called it ancillary services, as if the things that are really highly predictive of recovery outcome were a secondary thought. And a committee member said, we can't be calling these services ancillary, we have to call them essential. And so the whole shift in thinking over time has us to a point where we're not hearing conversations like we were hearing 5 years ago. We're hearing we have to ensure these types of services are available to individuals to stop this cycling in and out, what we hear, what we typically call as a treat and street mentality. Lastly, is really the implementation or the core elements of a person-centered recovery-oriented system of care. And that is an overlay or a care coordination entity that really is monitoring and keeping an eyeball not only on quality, but ensuring that services purchases are services delivered in a very quality way. A care provider network. We're not talking about just a treatment provider network, but an individual's overall care, and what are those needs that are necessary to ensure that care is provided, and that leads to a much more healthy, well individual, and then the more resilience, the less likely folks are to lapse into active use. Moving on, we have now.
Yeah, so I'm going to move through these slides relatively quickly.
I know who you are, and we know
Yes.
who you are.
So,
Well, why don't you say for the record your name and your position.
Okay. James Green, I'm the director for the Palm Beach County Community Services Department.
Thank you, sir.
And so we do want to focus a little bit more on the opiate settlement recommendations. So I'm going to move through these slides relatively quickly, but if there are any questions that the board that you have, please let me know. Slides 12 through 15, they're really just about prevention and education. It's so important that we move further upstream to begin to address these issues, and the recommendations that were formulated through this committee and the entities involved really speaks to that. Making sure that we're really educating the community, that we're fostering on page 13, where we're talking about fostering partnerships and figuring out how to really integrate the work that we're doing with our school district and other major entities. On page 14, it talks more about an inclusive process, really looking at the diverse needs of our county and really developing those non-traditional supports, those peer-to-peer supports, and embracing campaigns like the Get Your Green On and things that helps raise awareness about issues around mental health and substance use disorders. And what we want to do is make sure that people can acknowledge and recognize the struggles that those individuals encounter and families encounter. Page 15, same, we're still talking about prevention, but really focusing on self-care and looking at ways that we can create a more behavioral health technicians. It's something that Palm Beach County has been recognized for in developing that curriculum within our high schools. On page 16, we get to public policy recommendations, and this is really a shift towards a more person-centered policies, not just from state and federal policies, but our local policies and within our institutions as well, our institutional practices. We want to make sure that they're more person-centered and that we're looking at those supports that are available for individuals who are leaving treatment so that they can stay out of deeper levels of care. And of course, the expansion of Medicaid would be phenomenal. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. And so then on page 17, it continues with public policy recommendations. John mentioned having the county serve as lead for the comprehensive planning process, engaging the healthcare district, Southeast Florida Behavioral Health Network, and other major entities in this process, and really lifting up and amplifying individuals with lived experiences, because we know that we can learn a lot from those who've gone through these tragic times. And so page 18 focuses on our justice system. We have done a lot of research with FAU on things like our COSAP program and looking at individuals who are re-entering our communities, and we're seeing some phenomenal things that we need to invest in more in order to provide better services and ensure that individuals have their needs met more comprehensively. And so the expansion of things like the COSAP model here locally is certainly something that we want to look at. And then on page 19, we're also continuing to focus on our justice system and figure out ways that we can work with law enforcement to do more kind of diversion type measures for individuals who are interfacing with our criminal justice system, and really, again, focusing more on those peer-to-peer efforts in SUD and in our correction system. And then on page 20, we go to medically treatment and recovery options, priority recommendations. We want to continue our medication-assisted treatment and figure out ways to make that mobile, and so that we can reach more individuals. And we have to figure out ways to formalize more MOUs across different entities so that we can have more of a seamless transition for individuals who are leaving treatment into recovery. And those community recovery centers are going to be key for that. Continuing on with treatment and recovery priority recommendations, you'll see that we're really integrating more around trauma-informed care. That is extremely important, that our community continues to be educated about trauma-informed care. And also you'll see where we want to look at how we can coordinate more efficiently with the Embark program, and looking at NutriCare coordination and how that helps us to make our services more person-centered. On page 22, we continue with looking at those essential services. Housing, we know the social determinants of health are so very important, and so being able to focus on those essential services, housing, employment, things of that nature, they're going to be key for us to have a successful system of care. And part of that comes with creating a network of providers for mental health, substance use disorder, for housing, so that we can easily access those support services that are needed for individuals and families who are in recovery. And on page 24, we're looking at evaluation and monitoring priority recommendations, and how we can work with the Department of Health, who has a very robust O2DA program initiative, how we can continue to work with fire rescue and the medical examiner's office to create dashboards and figure out a way to analyze data to make better decisions for our residents. And to maximize the use of this recovery tool, the RCI, Recovery Capital Index, so that we can figure out what works and invest more in those things that work and less in those things that don't. And so on page 26, you'll see where we're really broadening the tent and focusing on how we can develop partnerships with our faith-based community. For many communities, the faith-based, the church, is where they get their supports, and we want to make sure that we're engaging with them as we continue to roll this out. And so you'll see a list of recommendations on how we can engage with pastor associations and others to assist in this effort. And then on page 27, we are looking at the Addiction Stabilization Unit priority recommendations, and we know that it is critical that individuals who are in crisis, that they can gain access to the supports and the services that we need. So we want to continue to partner with the healthcare district so that as they move on the Crisis Now model and they look to expand access to services, we want to be there and partner with them in that effort to make sure that individuals can get the services that are needed, and to offer, a different model where there are social workers and others who are there to assist them with other needs as they're available.
Thank you, Dr. Green. So not a whole lot on the history, but we know the genesis of this were a lot of pharmaceutical lawsuits due to their malfeasance, and so the county administrator and the county submitted our response agreement certifying that we were a qualified county in April of 2022. And on the slide, you just see the elements of what that certification looked like. As detailed in Appendix E, over 18 annual distributions from the regional and city county funds, Palm Beach County is expected to realize nearly over $122 million over that 18-year period. As detailed in Appendix F, the states, counties, and cities also developed a 13-page list of programs that are illustrative of the types of programs that can be funded with settlement funds, which is partially captured in this slide. We call them allowable uses. After review and consideration, the committee's opioid settlement recommendations were as follows. And although the committee did not prioritize, the initial recommendations align with the overarching or high priority recommendations. So they're duplicative in some respects, but first, to provide those sustainable resources, essential services. Housing should be focused on stable placement as well as affordability, and should include transitional recovery, supportive living, and permanent opportunities for individuals with substance use and mental disorders, returning individuals with justice placements, seniors who are under strict financial pressures, and living on fixed incomes and youth aging out of foster care. Coordination with the Department of Housing and Economic Development, municipalities, and other housing funding sources to support expanding housing opportunities with individuals with substance use and behavioral disorders. And if I might just editorialize, we've had a history of thinking that the solution is just the recovery residence, and it's not. The predictor is housing stability, not housing. So looking at that intervention for what it is as not a permanent placement, but a transitional, and getting and aiming, as our federal project did, how do we aim toward the ultimate goal of permanent, stable housing? That's the predictor. Thank you for that moment. Establish a non-conflicted neutral care coordination entity, serving as a single point of contact, providing assessment, level care determination, referral, prior authorization, and payment of certain care, and care monitoring across clinical and non-clinical recovery support and social services. They're the hierarching. You see syringe services next. The reason why is we know there's restrictions on government funding for syringe services. Syringe services programs are an allowable use under the settlement. So it was important to position that in the way that it was. Expand comprehensive recovery and treatment services. Promote recovery-ready work environments. We saw as one of the main things was individuals do not feel supported in their recovery in a work environment, and really expanding beyond the work environment and into what we call recovery-ready communities. And there are markers by which we can measure how ready a community is in that regard. Create public awareness campaigns that promote recovery-ready communities, focused on improving mental as well as overall health and wellness in order to build resilience in individuals and communities. Create and or support community-based education or support services for families, youth, and adolescents at risk for SUD and any co-occurring mental health conditions, which builds resilience, recognizes ACEs, and is trauma-informed. Expand the county's mental health and substance use research capacity and enhance its monitoring, surveillance, data collection, and evaluation capabilities in conformance with SAMHSA's quality assurance guidelines and other evidence-based methodologies. If I'm proud of anything, I'm proud of our partnership with FAU and putting all of our interventions to the test and ensuring their efficacy. Create and support community-based education to increase awareness and ability to recognize warning signs of different stages for behavioral health and substance use issues. And last but not least is the committee's recommendations that opioid settlement funds should be spent as follows: 90% on social determinants of health, prioritizing housing, recovery supports, care coordination, and environmental strategies to include youth, families, and community education, and 10% on deep end and crises care. And in the next slide, I'll allow Dr. Green to take this on, but
Yeah, so what we were attempting to share and convey in this slide is basically some of the different things that would constitute the 90% social determinants of health, things like the neutral care coordination. It's just an overlay where we're able to have a conversation with individuals as they're entering the system, making sure that they have the right treatment, and then leaving the system. And so there's continuous contact with those individuals even after they leave treatment and they're engaging in our community recovery centers. Things like housing supports, working with various entities that have mobile health type of programs, and again, peer supports, education and awareness campaigns. All of those things would go under the 90%, which we're focusing on social determinants. And then for deep end would be things like medical detox, partial hospitalization, and adult intensive care. And you'll see, again, we note at the bottom that $10 million of ARPA dollars that we've allocated to the healthcare district, that you have allocated to the healthcare district to work on the central receiving facility and the behavioral health campus. And so as we move forward with this process, the Community Services Department, we have internally a process whereby we distribute funds to nonprofit organizations who are looking to work with the county to provide these supports. For governmental entities, obviously, they're exempt from our process, but we're able to work with them directly to fund various initiatives. And so we just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we would use our internal process to issue a NOFO that is aligned with some of the strategic priorities that we just reviewed, and then go through the review committee process, which would include having an individual from the advisory committee on that review committee. And then those dollars, or those recommendations would come back to you for final approval.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. That was comprehensive and yet streamlined. Appreciate it. You did a good job. We're going to go forward with the remarks by the public. Commissioner Weiss is going to read 6 names. Going to have 3 on one side and 3 on the other. Please line up. And Vice Mayor Marino takes care of the time, and she has a time clock. I respect your opinions and your whatever you want to say, your recommendations, but I know they can be done within, let's say, 2 minutes. I'll give you 3, but I'll bet you could do it within 2. Let's see what we can do, okay? Commissioner Weiss, you're on. 3.
Maureen Killian, followed by Ray Whiteley, followed by John Van Arnhem, followed by Lisa Franklin, followed by Elaine Rottenberg, followed
Line
by
up.
Catherine Murphy.
Very good. Line up. Okay, ma'am, you're the first up. Give us your name, and the clock will start.
Hi, I'm Maureen Killian. I'm the chairperson of your advisory board. I am here with you today in solidarity as a person who has experienced our past systems, advocates to change our current systems, and a person who remains forever hopeful about our future systems. I'm here as a mother of a son who suffers from chronic relapsing addiction, a mom who has experienced the damages of our broken, non-existent addiction mental health systems, a mom who has experienced firsthand the prejudicial medical decision-making causing harm rather than doing no harm. I'm here as a community member who has advocated for well over 2 decades. Mayor Sachs, you might remember Stop Now and meeting in your office, asking for system changes in our healthcare system, mental health system, and justice system. To that end, I'm so very grateful to be leading this advisory board, and the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners had such faith in their constituents who have lived experience and complete this task at hand. Our advisory board has received recommendations from the community, and they have been incorporated. Sadly, many of those who have contributed to this plan over the years are no longer with us today. Not with us today to the exact failures we hope you vote to change and remedy. Not here due to the ongoing failures of the medical community, law enforcement, separation of mental health and addiction from whole person health care, the faulty alignment of mental health and substance use disorder under the social agency of DCF rather than the health department, the lack of long-term recovery supportive facilities, housing, and communities. Today, we have presented recommendations to help mitigate the treat and street methodology of acute care currently plaguing our system, such as multiple acute care visits without appropriate discharge referrals and long-term care referrals. The dehumanization of our most vulnerable patient population being transported with only their possessions in a trash bag. Social services that are not person-centered, programs with failing patient outcomes that are continually funded. We presented today evidence-based and research-verified recommendations, all of which are recognized social determinants of health that move the focus of the crisis treatment to a focus on a person-oriented system of care. Wholeheartedly, these recommendations to the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners are done respectfully, honoring the lives of our sons, our daughters, our fathers, our mothers, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and very, very dear friends. We all have hurting hearts today, and I thank the committee members that are still here and the public In summary, the plan is the continuation and culmination of the Board of County Commissioners and county's work on establishing a recovery ecosystem. 2, the recommendations contained within the plan, including the use of opioid settlement funds, align with the high priority goals of the Advisory Committee of Palm Beach County.
Thank you so much. And if you'd like, you can submit those so that we could all have a chance to read them later.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir. Mr. Bra-
Good afternoon. My name's John Van Arnhem. I'm a behavioral health project consultant with the Healthcare District of Palm Beach County, and
Welcome
many
back.
of you know me from my former tenure as an assistant county administrator and Virginia's deputy county administrator from 2015 to 2022.
Welcome back.
In 2017, I think it was mentioned, the county developed the first opioid response plan. And looking back, you know, there were things that we didn't know then that the staff has addressed, and you know, clearly the county has come a long way since then. I also sat on the selection committee for the attorneys that the county hired to litigate on the opioid settlement. So I do have some experience in this area. You know, the Healthcare District supports this work. We support the work and we respect the work of the Advisory Committee relative to the master plan and the opioid settlement recommendations. I just want to highlight two things. The Healthcare District submitted 5 pages of comments, detailed comments on the plan and the settlement recommendations, and obviously I'm not going to go through those, but I want to highlight 2 things for the board's consideration. And we respectfully request that the board direct staff to do a little bit more work on the opioid settlement recommendations. Specifically, the Healthcare District would like to see some additional funds dedicated to the treatment and crisis care piece. You've seen the 90-10 recommendation from the committee, and we respect certainly all of those items that need to be and could be funded from that 90% and should be funded for that 90%, but we can't neglect the treatment and crisis care piece of the continuum of care. And then the second thing I wanted to highlight was the reference and the recommendation on the establishment or the creation of a third party, if you will, to provide to function as a single point of access to the system, a neutral care coordination entity, if you will. We would like to hear more about how that would work. We're not sure who that entity would be. We're not sure if that entity was responsible for assessment, setting up treatment plans, authorizing expenditures, and payment. If you have multiple government sources of funds, who is that entity? How can the government even authorize a third party, a nonprofit, to take over that responsibility? We've been trying to understand that, haven't quite figured that out yet, and I hope the board, when you do see more specific recommendations relative to the funds, that you'll look at that. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a copy of the 5-page recommendations by the Healthcare District? Yes, we do. Could you provide that for the members of the board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, who's up next? Ma'am, go ahead, take the microphone, give us your name, and the time will start.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Elaine Rotenberg. I'm the Chief Clinical and Impact Officer of Alpert Jewish Family Service. I'm happy to be here. I've been there for 31 years. Apologize for our CEO, Mark Hopen, who had to leave earlier. First, I want to really thank Mayor Sachs and the commissioners for your support of the Jewish community since October 7th with the rise of anti-Semitism and all related concerns. I want to speak for just the time I have about mental health first aid and the significance of this evidence-based program being included in this plan, and to thank the staff for having welcomed community's input in this process. 10 years ago, Alpert Jewish Family Service brought mental health first aid to our community. We've built since then a coordination of multiple nonprofit agencies in our community and trained now more than 13,000 people mental health first aid, including ordinary citizens, police departments, clergy, various other faith-based groups, how to recognize a potential substance use or mental health crisis, recognizing that fully 50% or more of people with substance use disorder also struggle with mental illness. And we understand and recognize the importance of early identification and being able to bring awareness so that our community can support the effort of the National Council of Behavioral Health that has now trained more than 3.5 million people in the United States, with a goal of 1 in 15 people in our country being trained in mental health first aid. So our goal would be, and supported within this opioid recommendations, our goal would be to train over the amount of time 100,000 people in our county mental health first aid. And we are fully convinced not only that we can continue our efforts and do that, but having that be part of this plan and part of the recommendation will continue to save lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your service. Okay, come on right on up. We're not going to waste any time. If there's other names that were called previously, come on up to the podium. If not, ma'am, you're recognized. Give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Murphy, and I represent the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Palm Beach County, NAMI Palm Beach County. So I would just like to register NAMI's support for this master plan. We're in support of the plan, and we appreciate the inclusion of mental health in this 2024 update. As the plan indicates, roughly 50% of people who have severe mental health disorders are also affected by a substance use condition or a substance use disorder. The plan included much community input, including NAMI's, recommends providing sustainable resources, including housing, peer support, care coordination, and flex funds. It looks to SAMHSA to inform the county's person-centered, recovery-oriented framework. And it has an ongoing process of goal setting, monitoring, and revision. We're also in agreement with the recommendation to include the funders, Southeast Florida Behavioral Health Network, Healthcare District, to have a comprehensive planning process and collaboration. And we do support the subcommittee recommendations, particularly the recommendation to work with law enforcement and courts to intervene with offenders' misdemeanors earlier and provide treatment options. And lastly, being May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I do appreciate that the plan supports the Get Your Green On campaign to spread awareness, encourage open discussions about mental health and trauma, and destigmatize these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Commissioner Weiss.
So Sharon Burns Carter, Carrie Rosser, Rosso, Tyler Glock, Gaynell Goslin, and Tessa Moody. And I need one more. And Austin Wright.
Very good. Ma'am, you're recognized. Give us your name. We'll start the clock.
Hi, my name is Sharon Burns Carter. I'm a woman in long-term recovery from an opiate use disorder and a mom of 2 sons. And on September 20th, my son Caleb died from an acute fentanyl and cocaine toxicity. I serve on the advisory committee, on the FAR Compliance Committee, and the Recovery Community Hub of Palm Beach County. I want to thank you all for being here and listening to this plan. I've been listening to this plan. I've been here since 2017, since we had consultants writing our plans. Individuals do not get well in treatment. They get well in communities. Without a safety net that includes access to resources and recovery peers, they will return to substance use, which most consider a failure or going backwards. Another way of seeing this is in the domains of the clinical and social models. If an individual is discharged off or out of a clinical model, which is a treatment program, no matter how well that treatment was considered to be, without a healthy social model in place, they cannot be expected to end up anywhere but in crisis, and their crisis becomes our community's crisis. We deserve better, and we now have a plan that is inclusive, comprehensive, and based in science and in love. As a person with loved ones with this problem, I was always grappling with what was the most loving thing to do. Was I enabling? Was I just putting a Band-Aid on it? It was a life filled with hope and despair. And it was all up to me, because even though the person with addiction went through treatment, and now had a choice to not do drugs, they had nowhere and no one to not do drugs with. Thank you for listening and your serious consideration of this plan and for our community.
Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss. Sir, you're recognized.
Tyler Glock, 7600 Westlake Drive. Did not plan to go after Sharon. First of all, I've been here before for other things, so I'm sure you all recognize me. I'm only here because of recovery. You know, I'm a person in long-term recovery. Before that, I was definitely contributing to the other side of this opiate settlement money in Palm Beach County. So that's just my reality. I've experienced all of our systems, well, most of them. And, you know, I've read this entire plan, and the truth is that it grabs what we need, you know. It's hard. It's hard for me to listen to people talk like about recommendations for other things to spend money other ways, because the people that are involved with this plan are people like me who have been through the systems, know what recovery is, and then know how to help other people. You know, I said I go after Sharon. You know, she mentioned Caleb. You know, back in years ago when I was struggling, Caleb helped me. You know, and I'm still here. And it's hard for me to like say that, sorry, but like that's how recovery really works. It's about people that know recovery and experience recovery and helping each other. And this plan is that, you know, it's people that understand recovery, that know recovery, that don't look at it like, I don't know, you know, nobody, you know, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I have a minute, so I'm going to say it. But the guy from the health department said he has experience in this area. I disagree. You know, I disagree. You know, my best friend of 10 years overdosed 2 years ago on 45th Street and died, and that's why I got involved in this. You know, I'm here because I'm genuinely invested. Nobody pays me. I'm on the board. This is what we do. We've been doing it long before you guys wrote a plan. You know, we've been in Palm Beach County helping each other. So this is just us with your money doing what we're already doing and doing it on a larger scale. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, and please stay involved. All right, ma'am, state your name and you're recognized.
Gaynell Goslin, West Palm Beach. I lost my mother to alcohol use disorder when I was 15. I nearly lost my son before he was 15. And I want to register my support for this plan and speak to the family piece of this. When your child is diagnosed with cancer, not only are you asking who the best, who the oncologists are in the town, in the country, you're asking for who the best are. When your child has substance use disorder at 13, you say nothing, or most people say nothing. I knew the stakes were life and death because I'd seen it in my mother, I'd seen it in my siblings. For the grace of God and, as was mentioned before, community, I did not follow that path. However, I had to learn how to parent the child I had and navigate this treacherous world that is addiction recovery, where so many people suffer in silence and where there's often too little oversight. There is no shortage of treatment in this county. I lost count at 250, and I'd only gotten through B in the list of DCF-approved treatment centers in this county. There are about 3,000 in the state. There are nearly 1,000 in this county. What there is a shortage of is support after someone gets out of treatment. There is a shortage of education for parents like me who did it wrong at first and had to learn how to get it right. so that I could support my child in long-term recovery and understand this is a chronic illness. If somebody went to the hospital with a diabetic coma and you just expected them to somehow magically get out without and get well without insulin, without a change to their diet, without knowledge of how to take care of themselves, without support of their loved ones to support that recovery, it would not work. It will not work with substance use disorder either. So I do support this plan. I do support the support for health, wellness, access to health care, including behavioral health care, access to safe housing, and very important, access to support for families, because we are often a huge, important protective factor that helps our children get well. And thank you for your time and support for this plan.
Thank you, thank you. Please stay involved. All right, do we have the next person? Commissioner Weiss? Okay, go ahead and name more.
Hey, it's got to go.
No, Commissioner, it's okay. It's all right, it's all right. Sorry.
Sorry.
State your name.
Hi, I'm Tessa Moody. I live in Boca. I work in West Palm. I'm the community education lead for Rebel Recovery Florida. I want to thank you in advance for your support for the plan that was put forth before you this afternoon. It's pretty holistic and comprehensive, and it's a collaborative effort amongst your constituents. So when you support it, you're supporting your constituents. I started at Rebel about 2 years ago as a cultural anthropologist, is finishing my master's degree, and so I was looking at the culture of the syringe exchange and some of the barriers that they face. Anthropology involves a lot of observation and jumping in and listening to people. So I've listened to some of our most acute folks in the county over the last 2 years, and I've been watching very closely as well. And I can tell you that some of the things that I've seen has been difficult to cope with, difficult to stomach, a lot of sickness, a lot of illness, a lot of alienation, a lot of unnecessary bureaucratic hoops that people have to jump through where they lose a lot of trust in their services. But what I've also seen, especially when people are receiving services from our syringe exchange, is a lot of compassion, a lot of love, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of normal human being conversations that houseless folks don't get to have as much anymore because they're isolated from the normalcy of life. Our syringe exchange acts as a mediation between what we see as normal life in the community and being in acute houselessness, acute addiction. We're that place that people can come and they don't feel like they're being judged, where they can get services without being pressured to get other services that they're not ready for. And once they become comfortable, then they're ready for the other parts of recovery, if that's right for them. We provide low barrier wound care, overdose prevention, and just the human connection, that community piece that's really, really important. One of the things I was looking at when I was researching was what were the barriers for this service. A major barrier is lack of funding, because this is a greatly misunderstood service. We can't use any public funds. So the flexible funds from the opioid settlement money is really gonna assist us in being able to provide this mediation between our acute folks and the rest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, Commissioner, could you call the next six? Sir, was your name called before?
It was.
Okay,
Austin
come on
Wright.
up, state your name, and the clock will begin.
Sure. I'm Austin Wright. I live in Delray Beach, Florida. I am a former injection drug user. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm a sitting ex officio board member of the advisory board, program director at Rebel Recovery, and site manager of the syringe exchange that my colleague Tessa was just talking about. I want to offer my support of this plan. So often we as community members, service providers, and people that utilize the services in the community have little to no say in like what services are offered, where funding is allocated. And this is kind of like a once in a, can't even really say blue moon ordeal where there is any say from those people about where some of this money is going and what services they are funding. It's great that these dollars are making their way to the communities that were affected by this issue, finally, but we can't forget that there was just an unbelievable amount of bloodshed. There still is countless lives lost. We've all lost friends, family members, sons and daughters. I've had multiple overdoses. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for naloxone and the distribution of that around communities. And with that, I want to say that like that community involvement and that say should not be taken for granted. There are a lot of, it seems like other people and other entities expressing interest in this money. Ironically, like they all have a lot of money already, and they also tend to be providers or entities that have kind of lost a lot of trust from the community. I think, like Tessa was saying, when we're putting forth this plan that was established by community members and for community members, by adopting this plan, you are you're honoring your constituents. We have a say for the first time in a long time. Well, first time in ever, really. With that, I also want to emphasize, like, it's a little concerning to me. I heard a statement where talking about behavioral health being addressed by these dollars, as well as substance use. That sounds like an afterthought to me. Maybe it's not, but like these are opioid settlement dollars that come as a result of the loss of countless lives, and like that should be the first and foremost thought as far as this plan goes. I also want to piggyback on what Tess was saying on the importance of syringe access. I can get up here and I can really get on a soapbox about syringe exchange, and I can give you all the reasons that we should have it as a public health measure, but it's also a pathway into recovery. It is a way to engage participants and people that aren't otherwise engaged with other services. People aren't coming to the healthcare district or the recovery research network. They're coming to us first and foremost because we are reaching the people at the most acute level. Please don't overlook syringe access when you're deciding how these funds are allocated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Would you just stay there for a minute? I think Commissioner Barnett, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor, on what you were just speaking about, syringe exchange. Is
Yes.
that one of the programs that you have at Rebel Recovery?
Yes, sir.
I just want to also say thank you to Rebel Recovery. I had a family member, my brother, who benefited from your services. Unfortunately, like a lot of family members here, he did pass away, overdosed
I'm sorry to hear
last year. And my story is not unique at all, but I'm grateful for what you were able to do for him at Rebel Recovery. I was very skeptical when I first learned years ago about the syringe exchange program, but I've learned that it does save lives.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that, please, and explain just what the benefits are for this program and how it has helped people?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, the people that we engage with and that access our services, they're not seeking out these other services that are already receiving funding. They're coming to us because, like, at the end of the day, whether you want to look at it as enabling or not, because we have what they're looking for, right? And then when they come for that, we have the ability to offer HIV and Hep C testing, navigation to treatment for those things. We provide naloxone in various forms. When we were looking at the overdose rates, just like the 2018 and 2019 drop, it's very clear when we started distributing naloxone and Narcan widely. As a public health issue, I think the community is only as well as its sickest members, right? So like it's really simple to understand, like the less spread of HIV, Hep C, and other infectious diseases, the more healthy the community is as a whole. That's really simple and straightforward. But understanding that syringe access and syringe exchange programs provide a pathway to people who are otherwise unmet and their needs are unmet, they just don't get services because they're not seeking out these services yet, right? We get to engage with these people. There's a study out of the CDC, 2000 study, 2017 study, 2022 study. They all come back with the same thing. Participants of syringe service programs are 5 times more likely to seek treatment for recovery and substance use disorder and 3 times more likely to achieve long-term recovery than those who do not engage with that type of service, that service specifically.
So you see a higher likelihood of people coming back to seek treatment. Have you seen an increase of people who actually end up on that road to recovery?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I can say that Tess mentioned like the personal relationships that we build. And as a person with lived experience as a former injection drug user, my engagements with people that weren't also in the midst of problematic and chaotic substance use were almost always punitive, or at least they felt like that, right? Like either I felt like I was being looked down upon or looked through at best, right? When people come to us, oftentimes it's the only engagement that they have with somebody that's not also in the midst of chaotic substance use that is compassionate, loving, and on an equal level with them, saying, hey, I'm not here to tell you what you need to do. I'm not here to like give you services with some strings attached. All I'm here to do is offer you what you need. What kind of support do you need? How can we continue to support you and help you? Because at the end of the day, like dead people don't recover, right? Like dead people don't go to treatment. Dead people don't get the opportunity to seek out all these other services. Keeping them alive, keeping them healthy, keeping them from contracting infectious diseases, all of that stuff keeps them going for another day. And that's what recovery is about. When I was early in recovery, that's what supported my recovery, is having a sense of purpose. I got into recovery before we had a syringe exchange in the county. I'll put myself out there on a personal level. Before y'all legalize it, I was exchanging syringes on the streets of Palm Beach County. I wish I had those services, and even 3 months into recovery, like for me, that was the thing that gave me a sense of purpose. And I feel, when people come to a service like that and are able to engage with people who have been there and have found a way out and can kind of just exhibit, leading by example, giving them compassion without strings attached, it goes a long way for somebody. Even if it's just to get them thinking, maybe I can do this too, that's huge, and I've seen it over and over and over. We've had participants of our peer support services and our syringe exchange services that have become obviously valuable community members and people who are also doing this work.
One quick follow-up, Mayor?
Oh, right ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. In addition to peer support and syringe exchange, Rebel Recovery, do you also provide beds?
We do not have housing directly. We work with, we were in the annex for a long time with the Lewis Center's housing program. So there's a lot of other organizations that we work directly with. At the point that the annex was still open, we had peers in there. So while we don't have beds, we have worked, but housing is a huge issue as it is.
Well, I've talked to so many who've said that it's one of the most critical aspects of getting people into recovery is getting them off the streets and into transitional housing or into a sober home or a recovery house. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just sober homes, but I would also emphasize the need for more housing first. Sober homes are great. They provide recovery support, but we kind of expect people to get stable and give us clean urine before we give them basic needs, right? And it's a really simple, I would hope it's a really simple concept that we're asking people to reach the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs of get to self-actualization before you have your most basic needs met, being a safe place to stay, safe place to sleep at night. Substance use becomes an issue, addiction becomes an issue, but also for people living on the streets, it's a utility. People use substances to stay awake, to keep from getting robbed. People use substances to stay warm or just deal with the inclement stuff, climate, whatever, of being on the streets and all that comes with it. It's really, really difficult for somebody to get to the point where they can even get into a sober living facility before they've had those basic needs met. Housing first, and I mean, there's models across the country and studies for decades that show the effectiveness of housing first, and we could get into that, but you meet people's basic needs, you get them sheltered and housed, that gives them far more of a fighting chance to actually start working towards things such as recovery from substance use. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story of recovery.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright, are you an ex officio member of the
Yes,
board
ma'am.
then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Maybe you just become a member.
Cool.
Thank you. What's interesting is to hear from so many of you who have been through this journey, and we are ready to listen to you and accept your recommendations, because you've seen things that most of us have not seen, and we want to learn and use these funds in the appropriate way to help people. Thank
I
you
really
so much,
appreciate
Mr.
that.
Wright. I hope you accept being a member of the board.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank
Okay,
you.
we have 6 more names.
Mayor, could I
Yes,
address
please,
one
of
of
course.
Mr. Wright's comments? He made the reference to the behavioral health portion, and I was probably the one that said that, and we were trying to expedite our explanation. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that this plan is a behavioral health and substance use plan, because that is the strategic priority that the Board of County Commissioners has adopted. However, the recommendations for the opioid settlement dollars are only going to be spent in those areas that are eligible under the opioid settlement. It wouldn't be to cover all of the behavioral health
Understood.
needs. The board has already committed dollars in that way, but we thought it was necessary to have a complete plan, because the board has established both as their strategic priorities.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, Commissioner Weiss, let's have 6 more names.
Micah Robbins, followed by Jacqueline Hall, followed by Stacy Katz, followed by Rachel Dosakal, followed by Sam, looks like Wilcox.
As your name is called, come on forward, and you can stand in the aisle. It's okay.
And Patrick McNamara.
Because we want to hear everybody. We've given everybody 3 minutes. If you could do it in less, that's great, but we want to respect everybody's opinion. Sir, state your name. We've seen you before, I know.
Seen me before.
Yes.
I even found my purple shirt.
I know, I noticed it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mayor Sachs, Vice Mayor Marino, Commissioners, Fritz. This has been a journey. This plan has been a journey. Many of us here who've stuck around to the very end to make sure our voices are heard. And I first have to say, Brother Austin, that's what it's all about. I'm here as not only as a member of the community hub of our RCC network here in the county that has been established in the last several years, also representing FAR, the Florida Association of Recovery Residences, among many other things that I do in this community. This plan is something that we do support. The one thing that we're challenged with is that this is a finite amount of dollars. We have over a $7 billion county budget. It's much larger than the entire state of Maine, than where I come from, for this incredible place that we live. Our commissioners, and I've spoken to all of you, you saw the value in hearing from the community when establishing this advisory group. You're here to hear their recommendations. It's an incredible task, but it's also an incredible piece of leadership. Unique, not only in the state of Florida, maybe anywhere. So now we have to take a look at what we can do with this finite amount of dollars that, quite frankly, I wish we didn't have. We have them because we lost Caleb, we lost Rory, and hundreds of thousands of others. These are not government dollars. These are not government programs. These are solutions for people seeking recovery, seeking health, for the families that lost, and for those that are still with us. This is what this is for. In these recommendations, are there incredible things to be offered? Absolutely. But the things that need the most, those recovery-oriented components, individual first, that's where the priority has to lay. We have other partners in this community, and they do incredible work. They are also funded to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Why would we come after this finite amount, unique, once in a lifetime, to make those differences? We have the opportunity to create the standard for the opioid response settlement initiative in the United States. People are looking at us. What will we do?
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you for your
Appreciate
leadership and the
Thank you.
decisions you will make.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right, do we have any other names, Commissioner Weiss, or should we move on? All right, come on up. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam County Administrator. I am Dr. Rachel Dosicle. I am the CEO of the Hanley Foundation. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Green, Mr. Hulick, and the other members of this council. I want to let you know that Hanley appreciates and fully supports your recommendations. I also would like to let you know that Hanley is in the process of developing a program for perinatal women, and we are following this ROSC model. It is so critical that all of our programs support that model. This program is going to have long-term programming up to 4 years that is focusing on maternal health, mental health, as well as substance abuse. We will focus on the health as well as the well-being of children. This program will support at its core families and keep children out of our foster care system. The program will include vocational skills training, supportive housing, as well as quality early learning. It will also be embedded with research, and we are working with Dr. Heather Howard on ensuring that everything that we do is best practice. We will pilot this program, the very first 7 beds, within 90 days. And our plan is within 3 years, we will have 24 beds that are residential treatment as well as job training and the like, and 24 supportive housing units, all of which will